nomadic Iranians and their sedentary Iranian relatives, a trend that would continue when the Persian Achaemenid Empire was founded in 550 BC. Known best for their immortal struggle with the Greek city-states, this quintessential Persian empire had a complex relationship with the nomads to their north. Many Scythians served as mercenaries and vassals to the Persians, but many more refused to submit their quota of earth and water to the King of Kings, defying the empire's attempts to subjugate them. Perhaps the greatest of Achaemenid kings, Cyrus the Great, conquered the wealthy Lydians, the mighty Medians, and ancient Babylonians. But when he turned his ambitions northwards, he would finally meet his match. In a campaign into what is now southern Kazakhstan in 530 BC, Cyrus came to blows with the culturally Scythian Massagetene tribe, led by a firebrand warrior queen Tomyris. Tomyris was able to defeat Cyrus in a clash that Herodotus called the fiercest battle fought between non-Greeks ever seen. There the Persian king was slain, and his head claimed by the victorious queen. Cyrus's successor, Darius I, would once again try to subjugate the Horse Lords in 513 BC, this time focusing on the tribes north of the Black Sea. According to Herodotus' account of this campaign, the Scythians did what they did best, refusing to engage in pitched battles, while using their light cavalry to constantly harass the cumbersome Persian force, drawing them deep into Scythian territory, all the while burning pastures, smashing wells, and raiding Persian supply wagons. Eventually, Darius was forced to retreat. At the end of this campaign, the Scythians had lost a good chunk of their best pasture land to their scorched earth policy. Nevertheless, the nomads retained their independence, and in the decades that followed, they would slowly recover. As one might have guessed from Herodotus' constant appearance in this video, the Scythians have an extensive history with the ancient Greeks, with the two worlds mainly intersecting along the northern coast of the Black Sea. The Greeks had colonies in this region since the 7th century BC, but it was in the 4th century Bosporan kingdom that Greeks and Scythians truly began to live in harmony with one another, thriving as partners in the local fish, grain, and slave trades. It was here that a unique style of Greco-Scythian art developed, with Greek artisans crafting ornate gold pieces for Scythian customers, featuring both the old Scythian animal style and Greek humanistic forms as well. This Hellenic influence on Scythian material culture would extend throughout the Ponto-Caspian steppe, affecting not only Scythian art, but their arms and armor too. That is not to say that the Scythians always maintained peaceful relations with the Greeks. On the contrary, some of their most devastating wars were fought against the Hellenic world. In the latter half of the 3rd century BC, a man known to the Greeks as Ateas had become among the most powerful of Scythian kings, ruling a vast confederation of tribes between the Danube and the Don rivers. In 339 BC, he turned his territorial ambitions southwards, past the Thracians and into Macedon. The kingdom was still a generation away from the reign of Alexander, but the Great One's father, Philip II, was a military genius in his own right and more than a match for the Scythians. That same year, Scythian cavalry came head-to-head with the Macedonian phalanx on the plains of modern-day Dobruja. King Philip won a decisive victory. King Ateas was killed in battle and his army was scattered, his tribal confederation shattering into pieces upon his death. This greatly weakened the power of the Scythians in the Pontic steppe. On that note, let us turn away from the west and take a look at the Scythian influence in the east. Like the western tribes, the Scythians on the Asian end of the Altai Mountains were composed of many diverse tribes, but collectively are referred to as the Saka. Records of their existence are found as far east as the annals of Han Dynasty China. According to the Chinese, the Sakas originally lived between the fertile Ili and Chu river valleys, between present-day Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, but in the early 2nd century BC, they fell victim to a classic phenomenon known as the nomadic migration domino effect. The Xiongnu, predecessors of the Huns, pushed the nomadic Yuezhi people out of their homeland in modern-day Gansu, China. As a result, the Yuezhi were forced on a mass exodus westward, making war on the Sakas and pushing them out of their homeland. Thus, the Sakas in turn were forced to find themselves a new home. To that end, they saddled up and thundered into the fertile hills of Bactria. At the time, this land was the furthest eastern edge of the Hellenic world, a rich urban empire ruled by the Greek descendants of Alexander's army. By 132 BC, the Sakas had subjugated the Eastern Hellenes and become the masters of the region. The Sakas did not stop in Bactria, but rode further south through the Hindu Kush and past the ancient Indus River. Indeed, for a time, a branch of the Scythians established domination over much of northwestern India, deposing the Indo-Greek kings who had ruled before. The Scythian presence in India would endure, in some form or another, for over 4 centuries. Following in the footsteps of the Indo-Greeks, the Indo-Scythians quickly adopted Buddhism as their faith, slowly abandoning their nomadic steppe roots to assimilate into the culture of their sedentary Indian subjects. Another place the Saka Scythians had a presence was in the desert kingdoms of Khotan and Shule in the Tarim Basin. It's not entirely clear how the Saka arrived here, but it was probably via their kingdoms in India. It's equally unclear whether the peoples of Khotan and Shule were predominantly ethnic Scythians. However, the common languages of these kingdoms were Eastern Iranian dialects closely related to the Scythian tongue, which suggests that descendants of the steppe nomads were the dominant population in the region. Whatever the case, these kingdoms were heavily Indianized and Buddhist. The arid desert offered little in the way of grazing land, so nomadic pastoralism was not an option. Instead, the population flourished in dense cities built upon oases and rivers. It was a far cry from the grassy plains and rugged nomadic lifestyle in which Scythian culture was born, but it could be argued that some form of Scythian culture, albeit hybridized and evolved, survived in this region. The most notable legacy of these oasis states is their interaction with the Middle Kingdom. As China's Han dynasty expanded westwards under the reign of Emperor Han Wudi, they came into contact with the cities of the Tarim Basin. At various points throughout the 2nd centuries BC to AD, the Indo-Scythians of the Tarim Basin were tribute-paying vassals of Imperial China, who used the region as a buffer zone to prevent being flanked by their greatest enemy, the nomadic Xiongnu. Eventually, like with all peoples and cultures, the Scythian world transitioned from its golden age into its twilight years. Over the centuries, different people groups would come and replace them in different chunks of their traditional heartland. In the early centuries AD, the Scythians proper were largely subjugated by their Iranian cousin tribes, the Sarmatians. The Sarmatians continued the legacy of Iranian nomadic pastoralism in the region for a time, before being subsumed by the same wave of Gothic and Hunnic invasions that would eventually take down the Western Roman Empire. The Slavic expansions between the 5th and 10th centuries AD ended the Scythio-Sarmatian presence on the Pontic steppe for good, and before long, the Iranian nomads had assimilated into the medieval forebears of Russians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians. In India, the Scythians eventually lost their territories to other power players in the region, like the Sassanids, Indo-Parthians, and Guptas. Whatever cultural presence they had in the region was eventually absorbed into the Indian mainstream. Meanwhile, the Scythians of the Tarim Basin and most of Central Asia were largely displaced and assimilated by a wave of early Turkic migration from the 6th century AD onwards, a legacy we still see today as the majority of modern Central Asia is Turkic speaking. The Scythian world was largely gone by the early Middle Ages, but the Scythian people were not wiped out entirely. The medieval Alans, who established a powerful kingdom in the Caucasus between the 9th and 13th centuries AD, were believed to be the descendants of Queen Tomyris and the Scythian Massagetene tribe. While their kingdom was wiped out by the Mongol invasion in 1239 AD, they remained in the region into the present day in the form of the modern Ossetian people. Today, the Scythians are a faded memory, a footnote in the history books of Greece, Iran, India, and China. Yet, as army after army of horse-riding, bow-shooting nomadic warlords thundered across the Eurasian steppe over the centuries, whether they acknowledged it or not, they were building upon the legacy of the Scythians, the first and original horse lords of the ancient world. Our series on ancient civilizations will continue, so make sure you're subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description, to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.
This video is sponsored by Sheets and Giggles. More about them at the end of the sketch.
Hi there, hello.
Oh, hey man.
Guess what?
No. Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you anyway. Have you seen that big triangle back there?
You know, I have seen that. I thought it was a normal triangle, but I got closer and that is a big triangle.
Yeah, it's real huge. It's very tall. I also find it weird how parts of it are white. Very inconsistent work by whoever colored that in.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm gonna go to the top of it.
What?
The top of it?
I'm gonna go there.
What, are you gonna go finish coloring it in?
Nope, I'm going up.
Oh. Okay.
So.
Okay, well, see ya, I guess. No, wait, hold on. This is kind of a big deal.
I don't really see that. You can drive anywhere you want. It's not really a big deal.
No, you can't actually. It's way too upwards to drive.
Oh.
Yet your car will just flip backwards and explode and your cousin Ron will die, but you'll make it out on time.
That seems extremely specific. Did that happen to you?
I'll never tell.
I feel like you just did.
Anyway, since I can't drive up there, rest in peace, Ron, I'm gonna have to walk.
Why?
Because of the car thing. Right, but why do you want to be up there, exactly?
We'll see, once I'm up there, I'll be up there.
Yeah.
So, what will that accomplish?
We'll all have accomplished it. Are you gonna live up there?
Oh no, I'm gonna have to come back pretty quickly. That's not a safe place to live, I think.
Oh, it's dangerous up there.
Oh, very dangerous. I've been testing it out a little bit. The higher you go, the harder it is to breathe.
Oh my god, you shouldn't go there. It's also just incredibly cold.
Jeez.
And if you fall, you just kinda keep doing that. That's what happened to my cousin Mitchell. How many cousins did you lose messing around on the triangle?
Oh, less than 20.
This doesn't seem like something you should be doing. I don't get why you want to go up this thing at all.
Well, because it's there.
Oh boy, that sure doesn't feel like an answer. Well, because it's there and it's difficult to do, you know? I want to find out what I'm made of.
I can tell you that right now. Blood and bones and organs.
No, but like inside. Blood and bones and organs.
Well, we'll see, I guess.
So you going right now?
No, I think I'm realizing I should probably prepare a bit.
Prepare? Yeah, kind of just put my body through situations that make it seem like I'm going up the triangle, but really I'm just down here and I'm safe. And you're confident that you won't freeze to death.
I know exactly what I'm doing.
See, that's pretty much what it would look like, so I'm gonna avoid that. Why did you Photoshop that?
Helps to visualize these things. Hey, I thought of another fun thing to do on the triangle. You want to hear about it?
Not really. I think people are gonna like this a lot. I figure we could strap long sticks to our feet and slide down the triangle real fast.
That sounds insane. That's not gonna be a thing. Hi there, hello, it's me, I'm the Adstronaut. I'm out here in ad space to talk to you about Sheets and Giggles.
Listen, I don't know about you, but I keep seeing ads online about hot moms in my area.
And I think it's time someone takes care of these moms, you know what I'm saying? Give them exactly what they're asking for.
Ultra breathable eucalyptus bed sheets. Sheets and Giggles make super comfortable bedding products that are the perfect gift for Mother's Day. Did you know that sometimes moms get hot for no reason? Just hot flashes. Scientists have no idea why.
Well, Sheets
Sheets and Giggles sheets are temperature regulating, which means they'll make your hot mom feel real good. These things are cool in the summer and cozy in the winter, and just in general extremely soft as heck. I'm told that hot moms are always talking about wanting to slip into something more comfortable, so I feel like they'll really appreciate these. And hey, for Mother's Day 2021, Sheets and Giggles is offering 21% off. Just head over to sheetsgiggles.com and use promo code HIMOM. It's their biggest sale of the year until Purple Friday in November, so it's definitely the right time to make sure hot moms are satisfied. Oh my god, that all sounded dirty.
Yugoslavia. For many, a long-forgotten, failed nation. For others, an all-too painful and recent memory. A once united federation made up of 6 neighboring republics, Yugoslavia's existence was never a simple one. With constant ethnic and religious division, it seemed that it was only a matter of time before a breakup would be imminent. But was that the only cause of Yugoslavia's collapse? And how did the ethnic disputes actually lead to the destruction of an entire federation? The presence of division and discord between the different ethnic groups within the borders of Yugoslavia had existed for a long while. This was not by any means a new development within the years before the collapse of the Federation, but the matter did worsen following World War II. Previously, Yugoslavia had actually been the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. This kingdom was then transformed temporarily into the Democratic Federal Yugoslavia, and shortly after, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Before the expansion of republics and particular ethnic groups within Yugoslavia, there was already significant disunity between the Serbs and other ethnic categories, which served as a shaky foundation from the start. While nationalism was a raging problem within the Federation from day one, there was a short stint of partial harmony, thanks to President Josip Broz Tito. Tito was a wonderful promoter of unity and brotherhood, and his efforts to curb the dangerous nationalism within his federation was impressively effective for some time. Moreover, during Tito's term as president, Yugoslavia became a regionally powerful nation industrially and had a well-effective economy. It appeared that the troubles of Yugoslavia were a thing of the past, until Josip Tito died. Leading up to the president's death, the growing economy had begun to show favor to only some regions within the Federation, and though Tito supported brotherhood, it appeared he may have gone too far to support the individual republic's right to national self-determination. The end of Tito's administration also came around the time of economic trouble for the Federation as a whole. Yugoslavia was now heavily in debt after the 1973 oil crisis and trade barrier complications with the West, which quickly reversed the success that the Federation's economy had originally achieved. This also exacerbated the ethnic divisions, most notably between the south of the Federation, which was viewed as vastly unproductive and undeveloped, and the entities of Slovenia and Croatia. With these new challenges and the death of the president who had worked hard to create unity within the Federation, the ethnic divide was now the center point of Yugoslavia. One of the main causes of this was the fact that each republic failed to split along ethnic lines, meaning that there were different groups within each border, and oftentimes each ethnic group was quite nationalistic. Furthermore, there was also the creation of 2 autonomous provinces within Serbia itself, known as Kosovo and Vojvodina, that complicated matters even more. When protests broke out in the late 1980s, as ethnic Serbs throughout Serbia and the autonomous provinces tried to fight back against particularly the Albanian majority of Kosovo, the thought was that Serbia's communist leader, Slobodan Milosevic, would react by creating some type of unity. Instead, He justified the Serbs' outrage directed at the Albanians and began to push for reduced autonomy of both Kosovo and Vojvodina. Eventually, after a series of protests known as the Rallies of Truth, supporters of Milosevic managed to oust the governments in both autonomous provinces, which then cleared the way for the allies of Milosevic to be put into their places. The leadership of Montenegro was also deposed in 1989 after a second coup d'etat, and there too was placed a supporter of the former ruler. This was only the beginning of the conflict between the Serbs and the Albanians. Croatia and Slovenia were now joining the Kosovo dispute, coming to the support of the Albanian majority, which greatly angered the Serbs. Protests continued to be held, and both police and military forces were called in to deal with what the Serbs viewed as an attack against Serbia and Yugoslavia as a whole, mostly in reaction to Kosovo's calls to become the seventh republic within the Federation. One Bosnian politician and current president of Yugoslavia, Raif Dizdarovic, tried to calm the tensions in 1989 with a heartfelt speech to the Serbian protesters. "Our fathers died to create Yugoslavia. We will not go down the road to national conflict. We will take the path of brotherhood and unity," he said. Though the protesters reacted to his speech positively, it failed to end the protests, likely given the facts that the Serbs saw the actions of the Kosovo Albanians as the root of this national conflict. The lines were now clear. It was the Serbs against the Albanians, Croats, Slovenes, and even the leaders of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The conflict was nowhere near over. As the bickering republics aimed to resolve the disputes politically, the divide only seemed to widen, and Yugoslavia was forced into a multi-party system across all 6 republics. This was a major blow to the communists in the Federation, as most of them were beaten by the end of the 1990 elections. The fall of communism coincided with the same decline throughout the Soviet Union and its other allies, and pushed the nationalistic identity within the Yugoslav Federation even further. This sparked even more ethnic tension, because there were minorities within each republic, such as the 12.2% of Serbs in Croatia that were suddenly being threatened by their home's oppositions to their ethnic identity. In this specific instance, the new Croatian leader Franjo Tudjman claimed that he would protect the Croatian people from Milosevic and the Serbian threat, which created backlash from the ethnic Serbs in Croatia. These Serbs established a new separatist organization in which they demanded to be reunified with Serbia in the case of Croatian secession from the Federation. This soon triggered what was nicknamed the Log Revolution, where Serbs in Croatia attempted to take control of the Serbian majority town of Kin and appealed to the federal military for support. When Croatian helicopters filled with the armed special forces were sent in to quell the revolt, the Yugoslav Air Force decided to intervene and ordered the Croatian helicopters to turn back and stay away from Kin, or else they would be shot down. The Croatians followed the command and returned to their base in Zagreb. As tensions continued to boil over, a period known as the Yugoslav Wars broke out in 1991 throughout the Federation. Yugoslavia was now doomed, and the efforts that had been made by dominant Serbia and any other supporters of the Union were now appearing to be completely in vain. In June of that same year, Croatia officially declared their independence, despite disapproval from other republics. This independence was delayed by 3 months through the Brijuni Agreement, but was nonetheless imminent. Macedonia declared independence in September of the same year. On January 9th, 1992, the Republic of Serbian People of Bosnia and Herzegovina was founded, and Bosnia and Herzegovina as a whole declared independence on March the 3rd. The Serbian Republic within was to follow, after which point they laid siege to the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo, sparking a new stretch of the Yugoslav Wars. All that was now left of the once 6-republic strong federation was Serbia and Montenegro. Yugoslavia was rapidly dissolving, and there was no hope for recovery. In addition to the ethnic disputes and now full-blown wars, the effects of communism collapsing and the struggling Yugoslav economy had also contributed to the decay of the Federation. Still, no factor seemed quite as obvious nor relevant as the ethnic divide. This is what led to the utter chaos within the dying Union, and what would eventually cause the official dissolution of Yugoslavia, now only made up of Serbia and Montenegro, on February 4th, 2003. The Federation transformed into the State Union of Serbia and Montenegro, which was no more successful or stable than its predecessor, and itself broke up on June 3rd, 2006. As far as the conflict with Kosovo, its autonomy and status as an independent nation continues to be debated throughout the world. Many countries, such as the United States, do recognize Kosovo as its own nation, but Serbia and its close allies beg to differ, a sign that the ethnic conflict sadly did not disappear with the dissolution of Yugoslavia itself. Each individual nation had its own strong national identity, and the inability to properly place border lines to separate each ethnic groups proved to be an untamable issue for all of Yugoslavia. In the former Yugoslavia, Croatian and Serbian were considered one language, also called Serbo-Croatian and Serbo-Croat. Today, largely because of the connection between language and national identity, there has been an effort to have Serbian and Croatian recognized as separate languages. There are certain differences between the two languages in vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Moreover, they have separate writing systems. Serbian uses both the Cyrillic and the Roman alphabets, while Croatian uses the Roman alphabet exclusively. The two languages remain mutually intelligible, with only minor dialectal variation. For that reason, some linguists refer to the two languages together with Bosnian under the single name of Bosnian Croatian Serbian. While the economic and political challenges that the Federation faced were clear exacerbating forces pushing towards a final collapse, it was truly the ethnic division and the lack of brotherhood that destroyed Yugoslavia from the inside out.
Good vittles. Think I got some dog eggs in here.
Damn it! This is the third family meal Uno's missed this week.
That just leaves more for Daddy.
I'm gonna go check on him. Giuseppe, make sure none of these hogs touch my food.
Another round?
Nah, I'm good. Drinking alone instead of eating dinner with your family. If I was a Midwest housewife, I'd be considering divorce. All right, enough's enough. You've been Mr. Sad Clown for 3 days now. Time to get it together so we can get back to helping people.
Help? Who have we helped? We've certainly killed and maimed people. I know that much. Bebo, give me another.
I can't talk to you when you're like this, Uno. You're a beast. A feral beast! Bebo, cut him off!
Cut me off, you're dead, Bebo.
Bebo is confused.
Whatever, no one listens to me anyway. I'm out of here.
What's gotten into my special little guy? I gotta figure out some way to help him.
When are we gonna start taking baths together? I'm starting to feel a tad isolated in this big old house.
There will be no baths with you, stink pig. So, as you can see, Chris Kyle, these freaks have been up to some deeply dark-sided shit. And I got enough here to put them away for a long time. A very long time.
Great detective work, King.
Thank you, Chris Kyle. American sniper, war hero, strong man.
Your mission is righteous. That's why God sent me down here to help you. But first, we must do something. Something of great importance.
One moment, Chris Kyle.
Hi there, King. Time for your parole inspection.
Oh, Greg! I forgot it was that time. Well, come on in. You won't find anything strange or supernatural in here, I swear.
Well, you know we love to hear that, King, but still gotta check. Normal. All very normal.
Don't let him leave.
Hopefully this will cheer him up. Took me hours to make, but I think he's beautiful. HK, you are good to go. I repeat, you are good to go.
Howdy! I'm the Howdy Kitten. Here to wrangle up some smiles, lasso up those bad feelings, and to give you mama's milk.
Bingo.
Woo-wee! We are feeling it now. I think someone's getting ready to smile.
He's not dancing along with Howdy Kitten like I imagined. Better send in reinforcements.
Howdy Kitten's so nice they made him twice. Howdy, Uno.
All right, last room of the house. I like to come in here sometimes and rub the figures. Calms me down.
Well, this place is depressing and smells like dog eggs, but those aren't parole violations. Have a good one, King. I'll be on my way.
Wait!
Huh?
Well, seeing as there's no violations, you think you could knock some time off my sentence, or...
You know, I do hate seeing you like this, King. Sure. How about 2 weeks off? Sentencing department.
We need Henry King taken off the house arrest ASAP. He fed the needy and cured polio. Good behavior and stuff. He's awesome and good.
Oh, my stars! Yippee!
My power grows.
Good God, Chris Kyle. What have you done to Greg?
He was a necessary sacrifice. It's time you learn the truth, King.
I'm almost dry here, Uno.
Yeah, give us a smile so we can give our nipples a break.
I can't believe he thought this would work. What a...
Oh my God!
Oh my stars! Palm crop! Help!
God damn it, didn't we pay the homeowners association to get rid of those things?
Oh God, it hurts!
HK2! No!
Can't have a fence taller than 8 feet, but pond croc, yeah, that's fine.
Oh!
Come here, you. That a boy, Uno. Great job.
Oh no, you're dying. I couldn't save you either. Another body on my conscience.
Uno, you did all you could. Sometimes when you help, people get hurt. Oh, and and that's okay. It's the helping that counts. Now come on, give me a smile. Attaboy, partner. Attaboy.
Oh no, you saved us! Without you, we'd all end up dead like my brother, or cousin, or whatever he was.
You're a hero, buddy. Do you feel better now?
Yeah, I do. It is the helping that counts, huh?
It sure is. Now let's get back home and get back to work. I left a plate of slop for you in the microwave.
Want to take a bath later?
Don't talk about that in front of Howdy Kitten. That's us time.
I want to watch!
Haven't died yet. Oh, nope. There we go. Time to die.
What is that?
They're my bones, King. Your house was built on a veteran's burial ground.
What? They disrespected our troops like that? Huh. Guess these weren't Apache arrowheads I dug up in the backyard, then.
God has sent me to help you, but he's also given me the opportunity to come back to life. I have unfinished business in the Middle East.
The goddamn Middle East.
Exactly. Now, I need your help to restore my body, so I can re-enter the land of the living. In return, I'll help you terminate Cats and Uno and get you back on the force where you belong.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'll support the troops till my dying day.
Great, great. Now what I need is blood. Let's start with yours.
God damn. I'm no pastor, but this seems downright Jewish.
I am one of God's holiest angels. Did I not just release you from house arrest?
Yes, you did, Chris Kyle. You did.
I have your best interest in mind, King. Yes. Bring me blood. Restore my body. And I will help you kill Cats and Uno.
Yes, Your Holiness. Yes, sir. Yes, Jesus. I will serve you.
I have something important to say about the nunchucks, because ever since making my 2 videos, there's been quite a response from them, and some people have made response videos. And one in particular caused me to reconsider what I had said about them. And after listening to his arguments and thinking about it again, I have to say what I said about the nunchucks, that they were garbage, that was wrong. They're actually far worse. And I'm going to tell you exactly why.
Shadowverse.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and I must apologise for the little troll I did at the beginning of this video and the video title, but I think it's good because hopefully it'll engage people to come back, because the more I consider about these, the more people have raised counter-arguments to this, has caused me to re-look at nunchucks once again, the more problems I find with them. And this is me being as objective as I can with them, and if I am seeing more problems with them now than I did in my last videos, actually worse than what I thought they were. Now, some of the reply videos that have been made didn't even watch my 2 previous, only the first one, and they are addressing things that I addressed in my second video, so obviously I can ignore them. Like there's a couple that are trying to show that you can hit with nunchucks and not hit yourself, which I showed in my follow-up video. Yes, of course you can do that. I never said you couldn't, okay? So watch my second video, and that answers that. But there's been some other videos that actually takes into account my whole arguments, and 2 in particular have stood out to me. One, because actually caused me to legitimately reconsider a use for flails in particular. I don't think it fully applies to nunchucks, and that's this video here. And there's another video that was done by, this is the first video this gentleman has put up, and it's done by Milani Fitness. Now, at first, I was actually hesitant to even respond to this because I understand that there is a big disparity in our audiences. The thing is, though, I really liked his video, and Milani is a very engaging, enthusiastic guy, and I think he could actually be quite successful doing YouTube. I really like the guy. I think nearly every single one of his arguments are utter garbage, almost as bad as the effectiveness of nunchucks in comparison to other weapons. So, because of the level of arguments, and the other thing is because he's really engaging, he does speak from a station of authority, he has a lot of experience in martial arts, that these are the type of arguments that I do see people who watch the video would agree with.
The other reason why I wanted to reply to Milani's video is because many of the arguments he makes in his video represents the most common counter-arguments that many people were making who are disagreeing with me at the time I watched Milani's video.
Now, having said all that, I do realize the difference in viewership, and I was mindful of that. And so I left a comment, this comment specifically. I don't actually know your name, it's Milani Fitness on your YouTube channel, so I'm just gonna go according to that and call you Milani. If it's wrong, I apologize. I know that it can sometimes be a very daunting thing if a very large channel responds to a smaller channel, so I actually asked Milani permission under his YouTube channel, and I said that I got nothing against the guy, and I really don't. In actual fact, I like him. He's funny, he's engaging, it's great. I think his arguments are garbage, and I said I'll be going in after those arguments very aggressively, not against him, his arguments specifically. And then I asked if it's fine for me to do that, and he said, I accept your challenge to a duel. So look, he's got a good attitude, good on you, mate.
Now, after making this video, fully recording it, spending a week editing it, I actually decided not to publish it because I was genuinely concerned that it could have a negative impact on Milani in any number of ways. This was Milani's first video, and I have a channel with 1 million subscribers, and it was just too unfair. The thing is, Sir Ben, who works for me, one of the game nights, has actually been in contact with Milani and been having a bit of a discourse with him. And Milani was asking where the video was. We told him that I wasn't intending on uploading it, but he insisted. We then sent him an unlisted link to a previous edit of this video, and he watched the entire thing and then still wanted it published. So this video is a re-edit where I've just refined some of the points that I've made and added a bit of additional commentary. And even though I don't need Milani's permission, it is being published with not only his approval, but his encouragement to do so. And that is after he watched an entire previous edit of this video. So I really think Milani should be given mad respect for his enthusiasm in wanting to enter into such a debate like this.
Now, the next thing I want to say, all of my audience, this guy, I like him. He's cool, and even if he wasn't cool, please do not harass the guy in any measure or send any hate his way at all. I do not think criticism is harassment or hate, okay? I think when people say things that are worthy of criticism, it deserves to be criticized, as I think if a weapon is garbage, it deserves to be criticized regardless of, culture it comes from. We'll be talking about that topic a bit later. And I'm just gonna go in and reply to this video, not because it's going to get heaps of views, well, very well might actually, like I said, he does a good job, but because I think it's the best reply video done so far, legitimately, in full opposition to my points I'm saying, and it echoes a lot of the sentiment that people who disagree with me have been sharing in comments and other places online, and it's also going to be fun. Okay, so let's get started, shall we?
Most of the practitioners who demonstrate it and choose to create a professional opinion on them blame it on the weapon when more times than not, it's their crappy technique and misuse of the weapon that forms this odd opinion. As a practitioner of 16 years using a nunchuck,
this is bordering on what we would call the appeal to authority fallacy, meaning that only people with whatever arbitrary level of skill that I'm going to just decide based on myself, only people with that level's opinions are valid. And usually, it's not their skill or ability with the weapon, it's if their opinion aligns with the person criticizing it. This is what actually is the reality in this situation. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, okay? What matters is if you are stating something that is correct or not. Now, you can try and establish your opinion with experience in it, but it's absolutely not necessary. In fact, you can draw many valid opinions by listening to other people who do have vast amounts of experience in it. And also, you don't need to be a master in, say, the piano to be able to tell an awful, rendition if it's bad or not. To say that you need to be a master to be able to figure out if something is good or bad is a complete fallacy in and of itself. You can apply basic logical standards with zero experience in a weapon and draw a correct conclusion. For instance, comparing it to other weapons, the amount of training people generally need. Do you need the training? No, but you can observe the amount of training other people need to be able to, you know, become competent in the weapon, to be able to figure out how easily they are to master or not. And like, it's such a basic, simple kind of, you know, thing to try and establish. For instance, give a person a stick. They have no previous training in a stick at all. Are they instantly more effective and more lethal? Yes. Give a person nunchucks. No training in it. Are they instantly more lethal? Well, they'd be able to produce greater energy, you know, in swings, by the way, it's afraid. You'll find out why it's afraid a bit later in the video. Would they be able to generate more power? Yes. Are they more lethal? Not necessarily. If it's in a 1v1 fight, well then yes, you are a threat to more people. The other person is yourself, because we all know it's such a high chance of hitting yourself. The simple fact is, nunchucks are a horrible weapon for untrained people. That makes them objectively worse than any other weapon that you are more lethal at when you're untrained in. Just on that basic standard alone makes nunchucks a very flawed weapon in comparison to other weapons. Because as I'm going to point out later on in this video, you will find that I never said, not to my knowledge, and if I did, I was wrong, that's not what I was meaning. How can I say this is not what I was meaning? Because it was clarified by the other times in the video when I said explicitly that they're better than nothing, even though in my second video I said I'm rethinking that, and I still am. But I also said that you can absolutely generate more force with nunchucks than your bare fist. So you can do things with nunchucks that you can't do without. Now some people say that they are a lethal weapon then. They might border on lethal. Are they an effective weapon? I still think they are not an effective weapon because they have so many problems and detriments in comparison to other weapons. You could hurt someone with a pen, all right? Is it an effective weapon? Well, actually, a pen might be better than a nunchuck because it has more penetration. Something to consider. But, okay, so just because you can generate more force or power with any tool doesn't necessarily make it a good weapon when you're comparing it to actual weapons. Weapons that are properly designed to be excellent force multipliers that can increase your lethality regardless of your training. You can pick up and instantly far more capable, okay? So nunchucks honestly fall into the kind of area of an imperfect tool that can generate greater amounts of power than your bare fist. And so if your aim is just to, you know, produce greater amounts of power, sure, go to town. But if you're actually legitimately saying, okay, you want a weapon for self-defense and you are able to pick amongst all these other weapons, why on God's green earth would you ever pick nunchucks over so many other weapons that do not have the problems and detriments and other weapons that can do everything nunchucks can in terms of power generation, lethality, versatility, speed, all these things, and do more, and do not come with all the baggage and problems. Like, seriously, why would you pick nunchucks over just a plain old stick? One of the most fundamental, easily accessible weapons in all of human history. Like, seriously, if you were to put all the weapons on a tier list of, like, deadly all the way down and everything like that, a stick is probably the lowest weapon because it's not better than a knife. It's not as lethal as a knife, right? It's not as good as a sword. It's not as lethal as a sword and everything like that. And a lot of other weapons that are really good are honestly, they're just stick plus improvement. Like, what's a mace? It's a stick with a heavy thing on the end. What's a spear if not a stick with a pointy thing on the end? What is a sword if not essentially a metal sharpened stick, okay? Like, sticks are amazing, but the plain humble stick is probably on the lowest end of just the quality of weapons, yet the nunchucks, amazingly somehow, are actually would be below the stick in terms of effectiveness and like just utility as a weapon. And so, seriously, this is the issue, okay? It's not that nunchucks can't be used to a level of effect, it's why would you ever pick a nunchuck over other weapons that are so much better and less detrimental to the user? Like, seriously, there are so many other weapons that a stick is easier to find and get a hold of than nunchucks you actually have to make. You actually have to, like, actually damage a perfectly good stick, make it worse than what it was to make nunchucks. Why would you ever pick nunchucks when you had stick? Stick very good. Don't harm stick to make these crappy things. I mean, nunchucks, what are they if not just mentally disabled sticks? It's like, seriously, nunchucks are basically like a stick that had a stroke. Nunchucks are just sticks that are suffering from erectile stick function. And I mean, it does happen to 1 out of 5 sticks, so you have to be, you know. It is literally the stick that swings back at you when you use it. It requires 10 times the training, yet is half as useful as good old stick. It is the inbred, mentally disabled cousin of the mighty stick. That's what nunchucks are. Nunchucks, and I'm going to elaborate this further in the video, are utter garbage. Glasses fell off. That's how much of a head shake it deserved. Garbage. Like, by the way, for instance, there have been lots of people who have responded to my comments who have shared vast amounts of experience with nunchucks, okay? 20 years, 30 years, who have wholeheartedly agreed with me that nunchucks are utter garbage. Are they right now because they have the arbitrary amount of experience that you're saying you have? You see what I mean? Experience does not qualify an opinion. It might inform you to a level of experience, but that's it. It doesn't mean that you're right or wrong, okay? And I showed that I know how to use nunchucks at least mildly competently, but I'm not using that to establish to mean that I'm right. I only did that to try and get ahead of people to say exactly the disingenuous kind of things like this. It's like, well, you don't have, you know, experience to say, like, it's just some uninformed person who's... No, okay? When it comes to weapons, I actually am rather informed about it. I make my living of studying weapons because I find them really interesting and figuring out how effective they are, and I analyze fantasy weapons and I'll analyze real weapons and I compare them against other weapons to see how effective they are and what they should do, their primary function. And yes, when you actually compare nunchucks to so many other weapons, even the humble, plain, glorious, transcendent stick, they're garbage. And you don't need years and years of experience in this. In actual fact, many people have no experience at all, can, like, even that basic analysis I did before, that, you know, you give nunchucks to a person not trained in them and they're automatically probably worse because they can hit themselves. And it's like, even on such a basic logical analysis like that, we find that nunchucks are deficient, let alone all the other reasons why they're so poor. And you don't need any experience to just be able to figure that out. But what I'm saying is that we can be sucked into certain tropes that we want to be real because we're invested in them. We want they're cool and things like that. Especially if we've spent years and years training in them and, you know, promoting them up. Like, it might be a bit confronting to try and actually look at something honestly and determine when you weigh it up to other weapons, is it legitimately good or not? And I'm not saying that a particularly talented nunchucker couldn't beat someone who is untrained in stick, okay? But I'm always saying, this is the thing, that they have far more problems than so many other weapons. They're more detrimental, they can't produce as much power, and we'll get to the power thing. I've got demonstrations to share. Yes, they can't produce as much power.
People always misunderstand me when I say that, because I'm not saying nunchucks can't hit with a lot of force, because a lot of the replies that people have made is demonstrating that nunchucks can hit really hard. And I agree, they can. My point is that when you ever take a stick that is of the same mass and length of those nunchucks you are testing, the stick will always be able to hit as hard, if not much harder. Yes, nunchucks in certain circumstances, and depending on their size, are capable of hitting very, very hard. That does not make them an inherently good weapon. You need to look at all their properties and balance them all together and then compare them against other weapons and what they offer, and then that helps us see the amazing amount of deficiencies these weapons have.
Look, there are so many issues with nunchucks that make other weapons so much better. Like, literally, somehow the nunchucks are lower on the tier class of weapons than the bloody stick itself. Which really says something, let alone all so many other weapons.
Let me share an analogy. What things do we take into consideration when we are trying to determine if a sports car is a good sports car? Well, obviously, it's all those things that enable this sports car to achieve its purpose. And it's not just driving fast. There's actually a whole range of very important things that this sports car must be able to do adequately for it to even be considered good at its job. You can get the fastest car in the world, but if it doesn't have any brakes, no one in their right mind is ever going to call that a good sports car. But what if it had other deficiencies? If it had bald tires and couldn't grip the road, the handling was terrible, you could barely steer the thing, but people say, oh, but it can drive really, really fast, it's really good. It's like, no, that doesn't make it a good sports car still. In actual fact, because of all these other deficiencies, it's a terrible car. So then, relating this now to nunchucks, just saying because nunchucks can do something adequately, I don't think you can do it exceptionally well in comparison to other weapons, just like you wouldn't be able to hold up a sports car as being really, really particularly fast if it's actually just as fast as many other sports cars and actually much slower than other ones. And with nunchucks, there are some massive problems that Milani even points out in his own video, things that I've pointed out myself, and just to name one, their utter and complete lack of defensive capacity. There are other weapons that are poor at defense, say like the axe, but you can still employ them in defense to a much greater level than nunchucks. And when it comes to weapons, there are some weapons that can do one thing usually really, really well, like amazingly well, that it actually overcomes other shortcomings or areas in which it can't even perform in. Take, for example, a gun. A gun has real no defensive capacity either. What, you could try and block bullets with a gun? No, it's far too small to offer any measure of practical cover. But their damage capacity, their lethality is so incredibly high, and it's also very, very hard to stop that level, to stop a bullet. The damage that nunchucks can produce are easier to stop than so many other weapons because they have a whole area on their striking range that you can nullify if you're able to contact a chain, for instance, and so many other things that I'm going to be covering in this video. Nunchucks cannot do any one or even two to a few things so exceptionally well that it overcomes its profound deficiencies in so many other areas. Now, as I am reconsidering things, I think I can say nunchucks are still better than nothing if you were fighting unarmed opponents and you had no access to the vast number of more efficient, effective, and just simply better weapons. It is more likely that unarmed opponents are going to have pause or even hesitate if you have a weapon and they don't. And this, of course, includes nunchucks. So saying nunchucks are good because you can intimidate unarmed opponents is a disingenuous statement because any weapon would be able to intimidate unarmed opponents. You have a force multiplier. And there are many, many weapons that you can spin around and show levels of competency with to also add intimidation on top of that. And it does seem like there are many people who believe that just because you can hit harder with nunchucks, scare people, not necessarily more than other weapons, but because it is a weapon, you can scare people with it, you can spin them around and be really fancy with them, and you can conceal them effectively makes them good weapons. No, the standard of what a good weapon is applies far more broadly. If you want to narrow down these considerations into a very specific situation in which the nunchucks have benefits, you are then also acknowledging that there are so many other situations in which the nunchucks are garbage in, which makes them bad weapons as well. And that is not saying that they can't be useful in certain situations, or that you can't hit hard with them, or that they can't be effective. Yes, they can be a useful self-defense weapon, but not a good one, not an efficient one, and if anything, they're a very imperfect and also impractical self-defense weapon. And in regards to just the qualities of weapons overall, they are a garbage weapon in so many other applications in which weapons might want to be used in. So let me simplify the argument that I just explained. A weapon that retains high combat effectiveness in more situations in which weapons need to be used is simply a better weapon than other weapons that cannot retain as high a level combat efficiency in such situations, especially if its combat effectiveness is only truly present in very specific situations. This then creates the standard in which all weapons can be judged by. The weapons that retain high combat effectiveness in most situations will go higher on the list and will be now of higher quality. And the weapons that cannot be employed in as many situations will go low on the list, and they're the bad weapons. And the weapons that are on the lowest tier of the list, you can rightly and justifiably call garbage. The rock can be used as a weapon, but there's a reason why we don't use rocks in warfare or self-defense. Can you hit hard with it? Well, yeah. Does that make it effective in some situations? Yes. This also makes it useful in self-defense compared to when you have nothing. Does it then make it a good weapon? No. Nearly anything can be a good weapon if you're comparing it against nothing, because you're comparing it against nothing. There's no comparison, there's no judgment point, and so the thing that you can say it's better than nothing doesn't establish it being a good weapon. The way you determine if something is a good weapon, it needs to be compared against other weapons, not nothing. The base standard of a weapon is a tool that can be used as a force multiplier. It increases your lethality. And an object that can just barely satisfy that standard doesn't inherently become good at it. It is just achieving the very minimum required requirement. So a rock is not a good weapon because it can be used as a weapon. It is a barely adequate weapon at most. A good weapon is a weapon that can fulfill the requirements of a weapon, being a force multiplier, to the best, most efficient, most effective level possible in the most situations you could find yourself in which you need a weapon. And when you compare nunchucks to nearly any other weapon, they are garbage.
Now, look, I've probably really ticked off a lot of traditionalists so much so that they wouldn't even come this far in the video, so maybe it's too late for me to say, but I will say this, right? If you want to teach the nunchuck for tradition's sake, okay, because history or whatever, to build up perhaps coordination and because you like it and it looks cool, and I never said they didn't look cool, they look great! That's what attracted me to nunchucks using the first place. Nunchucks are flashy and they look awesome. All power to you. I think that's great. They're a fun martial arts weapon, but in terms of their efficacy, in comparison to other weapons, they are garbage tier.
One of the biggest accusations made against nunchucks is that they can't pack as much power as, let's say, a stick.
Yes, they cannot pack as much power as a stick of same mass and length. That's the key point of comparison. And so the nunchucks you're using are clearly, you know, commercially made. The stick you're using, that looks like a broken broom handle. So just in that, you know, analysis right here is that there's no way to tell if it's of correct similar mass. And I think by also comparison doesn't seem to have the similar reach. The comparisons in Tess I was making is that these ones are literally made out of the same piece of wood, okay? And like you'll see what happened to the cord. In my test, they are a bit shorter, but any additional level of length that nunchucks have gives them more leverage and essentially high capacity for power generation.
There's been a lot of misconceptions I've been debunking about the nunchucks, but the primary one that I was trying to debunk in my first video was to dispel the myth that they are uniquely hard-hitting weapons. Yes, they can hit hard, but not harder than any weapon that has similar mass, size, and reach. Reach is an important one when you consider striking, because the longer the striking point is away from the access point, it increases the end point rotational speed. Higher speed, combined with mass, creates greater momentum, which means impact force. The pseudoscience people try and proclaim of the rotation or it gets some type of additional magical energy out of the ether because it's connected via a chain is utter bullcrap. And even Milani in this video, as much as I love him, he even tries to do the same thing, using some pseudo-scientific explanation to describe that nunchucks will somehow hit harder by virtue of them being connected through a chain. People are just really misunderstanding a lot of the science and physics that are operating in regards to nunchucks in motion. At best, and this is very much depending on the type of strike that you do, nunchucks can hit comparably hard as other weapons of similar mass and size, but at worst they hit with far less power, and this is usually because of the chain connection. So I will repeat this scientific truth. Nunchucks do not hit uniquely harder than any other functional weapon of similar mass and size. If anything, usually caused by the type of strike you're doing, they will actually hit with less power. The interesting thing about this is that there are many strikes you can do with a stick in which you do not actually complete a proper, efficient kinetic link either, and you're not putting the additional mass and weight behind the strike in which you could have because the stick is solid and actually allows you to transfer more kinetic energy through that solid structure. So when you're using a stick and you're not taking advantage of the more efficient kinetic linking that you can achieve with them, it's absolutely possible to hit with less force than nunchucks, including when you put less strength behind your strike as well. That doesn't change the underlying physics that are at play here, and which will inherently give greater capacity and advantage to one weapon, the stick obviously, over the nunchucks. Which is why I was testing with max possible power, throwing all my weight, because of course there are many more inefficient ways that you can strike with both nunchucks and sticks. This was about testing maximum power. And when you throw all the power you can into a stick or a nunchucks with as much weight as you can, guess which one has higher capacity to transfer more force into the target? This is basic physics. So far from being a uniquely hard-hitting weapon for their size and dimensions, nunchucks can actually hit, at best, as hard as other weapons of similar size, weight, and reach, and at worst, hitting with far less power because they can have very inefficient transfer of energy, especially their problems with losing kinetic energy that comes from the mass of your own body that you put into the speed, and therefore the overall momentum, you lose that through the chain, and it not having a solid structure to the striking end.
Here is what a stick sounds like. Now, let's hear the nunchuck, both at full power. I don't know if you could hear a power difference there, but I would say that they were relatively similar.
So I'm sorry, I'm not convinced at all. And the fact that, honestly, the stick you're using there looks pretty small. If you're wanting to use a stick, get one of at least similar size and weight to the nunchuck. You know, a big, long, girthy stick that you can really grab and swing properly. Big stick. You want big stick energy. And look, I'm not teasing you for the fact that you have a little stick. Not everyone can have a big, girthy stick like me. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist, mate. You left yourself wide open. It's very little stick you're using. It's, you know, big sticks are better. Stick that you can really grab and swing properly. Big stick. You want big stick energy. And look, I'm not... Like, I'm not insinuating, I'm sure Anyway, let's stop. We're not going further with that. Okay.
One of the biggest complaints I've heard from these practitioners or experienced users of the nunchucks or people who claim to understand them is, well, nobody knows how to hold it right. One person says this way, another person says the other way. Oh my goodness. Come on. Just like with any weapon, it's preference. It's preference. And different preferences offer you different advantages.
I totally agree. Totally agree. In fact, this is one of the points of the video I think it's great. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, you use the nunchucks how you like, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. And so, I love your video. Even though I disagree with most of what you said, this one has actually, and there's a couple of other points where I'm on board. I agree. And yeah, hold the nunchucks how you want.
Okay. And another big accusation made against nunchucks is that you can't hit solid objects like it. Granted, humans aren't entirely solid, but you can't practice striking with it because it bounces off and hits you?
You know what sticks are great for as well? Walking sticks. Look at this. They're so stylish. This is going to be my walking stick now, and then I've got a weapon. But on this point, unfortunately, sir, you're straw manning my position, okay? Because you need something. It's funny, he does mention things that are in reference to my second video, so I assume he has watched it, but this is discounting what I said in my second video, is that, of course, you can strike in ways that are more controlled, but that's against, and even the demonstrations that you show, it's against a static target. As soon as that target does something you don't predict, and say moves closer, and so the nunchucks strike in a way that you weren't predicting, because you can't predict your opponent in every situation, they can deflect and hit you, and what you thought was a safe strike where you're going to follow through, yes, it can deflect and hit you and cause serious injury and make you just lose the fight completely by self-elimination. That's the point that you need to properly address if you're going to try and establish that you can strike safely with nunchucks. The point I made in the second video, you can't control your opponent, and there are vastly higher chances that you're going to strike in such a way in which nunchucks are going to deflect. And remember, like even on follow-through strikes, like what you're saying, if you always... actually, you don't say, but it seems like you're saying if you do follow through on your strikes, there's a much less chance of hitting you. No, that's only if you're hitting with the tip, usually, of the nunchuck. If you do a follow through strike and you strike someone right dead center of that, it's going to bounce off and deflect. The tip has a much higher chance of just following through. Middle, nah. And for that to happen in a real fight, as I show in my second video, all that needs to happen is your opponent to move a little bit closer than what you were expecting, and so instead of hitting on the tip, you hit middle, and deflection hit you, and bad things can happen. So, the point that you're making isn't actually addressing my point. I acknowledge that there are ways to strike with nunchucks safely, the ways that you're showing in which you can do. What you're ignoring here is the point that I said that you can't predict what your opponent does. And you are far more likely with nunchucks than any other weapon to make a mistake, okay, where you aim and you think you're going to be hitting in a safe way and your opponent does something else that you can't predict, and the nunchuck then deflects and hits you. There's a far higher chance of them doing that than any other weapon, which makes them, just in this instance, garbage in comparison to other weapons, let alone all the other problems, all right? And so if you want to address my argument, address that point of my argument, not a straw man.
I'm going to demonstrate here a bunch of combinations of different strikes you can do, and I won't hit myself. You guys can watch yourself. What?
Interestingly, you show that you can strike in multiple different ways with nunchucks. Never said you couldn't, but you also seem to be just acknowledging by implication that there are strikes and angles that you can't hit with nunchucks. Okay, let's make a comparison. Many other weapons, from a stick to a knife, even a pen maybe, right? Are there any types of strikes in which they become ineffective, that the strike would just have no effect at all? I'm trying to think, like, maybe if you hit and someone came really down low and you hit right on the bottom end, but even midway up, all right, a solid strike is still going to hurt someone quite a lot. But you can strike from any angle you want, okay, with a stick. Any angle from nearly any starting position. You're up here, you can hit down to any angle, okay? Can you do that with nunchucks? Like think about, there are so many positions where you could be in with nunchucks where you need to do something, you need to swing it back and around. I just can't go hit like that with a nunchuck. So just because there are effective ways to strike with nunchucks doesn't mean that there are many ineffective ways to strike with them in which you can strike effectively if you were using another weapon. They're garbage.
Nunchucks aren't a weapon that you can just pick up with no experience and hurt somebody with. You're most likely going to hurt yourself before you hurt anybody else.
Most likely gonna hurt yourself before you hurt anyone else. Do you have such a likelihood with other weapons? It's an interesting argument, and I said it once, I'll say it, I like you. I think you're great, okay? I think your arguments, like this one, are very poor, so much so that there's this subtle, like, unspoken implication and acknowledgement of all the vast, you know, negative limitations in the nunchucks, some that you say explicitly that we're going to get to. So if you can even say so explicitly that there are things that the nunchucks are garbage at that other weapons, you don't say other weapons can, but that's the implication. Nunchucks are garbage at this, and if other weapons are not garbage at, of course, you're saying, you're essentially acknowledging these other weapons. So then how can you say they're as good as other weapons? You don't, and I won't strawman you, but you are trying to say that they are a really effective weapon. I do not think a weapon that has such problems and limitations can be considered an effective weapon. I could acknowledge that it's an inefficient weapon, okay? It's still a weapon. You can produce greater force with it. And I said, if you had nothing, would you opt to it? I'm not so sure, because I think if you can rip them apart, you've got two really effective wacky sticks right here. And so, you know, that's like, nunchuck really is the disabled cousin of the stick. It's like, you've got two effective, like, good sticks here that you've now tied with some type of mental deficiency that they can't operate effectively. I'm trying to get there, but it's not letting me because the stupid thing is together. It's just making it worse. You gave me permission. I asked your permission. Granted, like, and you might just be all on board and just love the back and forth and the banter and the subtle digs and teasing. Like you did, hey, you gave me a dirt video, okay? It's funny. I get it. I'm not, so, but if you can give it, you should be able to take it. And I hope and expect you could. Let's all be adults here, because you do have a very small stick. Got a big thick stick. Sorry. But your baton, like, it's so small that you didn't even want to call it like a wacky stick. You can't even whack that stick. It's just a little baton. Maybe you can. It's a breadstick. Get a real stick, man. I want you to need it. Anyway, give us your address, and I still have, you know, like wood poles that I made this from, and I might make you a nice, big, thick, long, girthy stick that you can wave around with confidence.
And with that comes the fear of the unknown with nunchucks. Every beginner will be slow, oftentimes, because they're scared.
You've got sticks in the... Why don't you use those? You've got great sticks there. I don't need to send you a stick. You've got sticks. Why'd you pick such a lousy small stick? You deserve better.
And you should start out slow. They are a dangerous weapon to yourself if you don't understand how to use them. This is another thing that makes them effective in a street situation. People don't understand them.
Maybe you could use that one because it's someone who doesn't know how to use it and hits themselves. But the thing is that someone who does know how to use nunchucks, okay, are going to perform far worse in real life than on a movie.
No matter what position you're in, with a pair of nunchucks, you can almost strike from anywhere. I can strike you from here, I can strike you from here, I can strike you from here, I can strike you from here. You take one step towards me, boom!
Okay, those are some very specific positions. What about from here? Can you strike, you know, hold the nunchuck up here, can you strike someone with here without first bringing it back to swing around? Like we're talking about just here and down. Well, maybe if you like flick around, but like, come on, man, you can strike from here, you can strike, like really, can you strike with nunchucks effectively from any position? And look, can you strike effectively from any position with a stick? Perhaps not. There might be, I'm sure if it was shoved far enough at your own rear end, it would be very hard to strike someone effectively from that position. But I would say there are far, and people might say, I've got my own stick shoved on my own body. But there are vastly more positions in which you can strike effectively with a stick than with nunchucks. In fact, nunchucks, man, this is, look, we've really I would say I feel sorry for nunchucks, but it seems like they're now looking, as inbred as they really are as effective weapons. But even you are showing like you're holding it back here. Why are you holding this one back here? Is it so, you know, you can get the leverage and swing out? My one's too long. If it was closer, I'd get the thing because anyway. But you seem to be always going into a position which optimizes your ability to strike with it, right? It's like, it's almost like nunchucks need very specific start positions, or any like those poses, brace positions, stances to be able to strike effectively with them.
Tell me honestly, would you really want to approach a piece of hardwood oak spinning like this in front of somebody? You tell me.
Now, you don't say this in the video, but the example of you spinning around, would you want to approach someone like this if you were comparing against an unarmed person? And I mean, you have a force multiplier. Of course, any person is going to have pause if you are unarmed and they have something that can strike with far more damaging power than with their bare hands. But doesn't mean that you're suddenly invincible. In fact, if you know the limitations, there are many problems doing that. And then if I had a weapon, and I would always try and avoid conflict anyway, but if there's no way to avoid conflict, or I was trying to, protect people who have trouble getting away or running away and stuff like that, and you're in this position where you're forced to defend yourself and others, okay, yeah, there are so many, like, give me a stick, like, I would feel very confident because I know the limitations. To assume that that is actually an effective type of defense or would ward people off, there's a point to be made about intimidation, but to think that that is actually a solid either offense or defense, to me, I feel that reveals some of your own lack of understanding in actual combat. Us guys in the Hemi community have actually experimented with the efficacy of spinning with swords. Specifically, if the classic kind of spinning, or spinning like this, can have any measure of effective defense. The thing is, the big problem with spinning is that it looks flashy, and, movies and everything show that it's really great. In reality, it's garbage because it's actually large portions in which the sword is not defending yourself. If I'm doing a spin like this, okay, there's only a couple of times when the weapon is actually facing the opponent. Now, I'm demonstrating this with a basic foam barb sword. I could do it with steel, but this is instructive enough and it's safer, okay? And so, do you see this? These are the points in which the weapon is forward. Every other time, which is actually far more often, the weapon isn't even facing your opponent. And even then, I can't predict the angle of attack the opponent is going on. And usually, if you had a static defense where you can block and do something far better, you can guard your lines so much better compared to something as stupid as this. That even if you're spinning really fast, most of the time, this actual weapon is not going forward, okay? Most of the time, it's actually behind you. So it's actually remarkably easy to break through a defense like that. It might be intimidating, but if someone who either knows how deficient these things are compared to other weapons, or is just really committed, that's a horrible offense, defensive action as well. The other point why such a movement like this is garbage, okay, is that this isn't solid, all right? And so when this weapon comes in contact or contest with another weapon, which one will break through and have a chance to hit you? Obviously anything that's solid, because this isn't solid, and so it doesn't matter how hard you swing it, okay? If someone is committed enough, of equal power, even less so, it'll break through that, and the stick will come and hit you, okay?
And I'm not saying that these are the best weapon to ever exist, and that you can take this against a sword, and that you can take this against short swords, or you can take this against a spear, but they are a really effective weapon for short-range to medium-range combat.
I guess this depends on how you establish or define effective, okay? Because in my mind, a weapon that requires such vast amounts of training to just not be a detriment to yourself makes them very ineffective. Okay, what if you know how to train them? Are they then effective? The capacity for them to bounce off and hit yourself because you can't predict your opponent, I'd say that makes them, less effective than other weapons. The fact they can't hit with as much power, the fact that you can't do certain specific strikes like jabs and everything like that, the fact that you have to reset yourself to strike properly with them as well. They have so many problems that in comparison to other weapons, they're very ineffective. But do they enable you to hit harder than your bare fist? I've always said that, then yes. And is that the bar of a weapon that you just hit? Because, look, a rock is, in that sense, an effective weapon. But really, would you pick a rock over a good stick, which gives you proper leverage, something like that? Or many other effective weapons that you can conceal just as easy, if not easier, that aren't illegal, and so many other reasons like that? No, nunchucks are not an effective combat weapon, and your standard for an effective combat weapon shouldn't be, can you hit harder than with your fist, okay? There should be other important standards that we compare it against, like safety to the user, like efficiency, like versatility. And in those comparisons, and other ones that I didn't even mention, nunchucks fall so short.
And if you're fighting somebody inexperienced, you have a major upper hand. Not only are they scared of them, but if you know how to use them properly, you can catch them off guard almost anywhere.
Come on, mate. If you're fighting anyone who's inexperienced and you have anything that's a force multiplier, you have a massive upper hand. Let alone, you don't even need a weapon. If you're fighting someone with inexperience, bar anything, you have a massive upper hand if you have any level of training. I mean, come on. That does not validate nunchucks at all, just because you can hit harder with them than with your bare fist. No. And especially if you can have a better weapon that's easily more available, that's more legal, and everything like that, like an extendable baton or a stick or something like that, those options are so much better. And so your standard should not be, you know, are they going to be good against an inexperienced opponent? Because you would hope a weapon would be good against an experienced opponent too, would you not? Like, seriously, because if you're fighting against someone who actually legitimately knows the limitations of the nunchucks, especially if they're confident that they can tank a hit, if they run at you, hold up here, and just get a power through a hit, one of the key things to be able to defeat someone using nunchucks, close the distance, get right in close, because as soon as you start grappling and everything like that, as you yourself acknowledged, oh yeah, you might be able to hit, oh, come on, mate. And then if your opponent has a weapon and they have any measure of experience and they know the limitations and like, not just strike force, but let a nunchuck hit against a stick and the stick powers through, if someone knows that, okay, that the nunchuck is so garbage defense and they're confident that any solid strike is going to just blast through defense and the only way that they're going to be able to protect themselves is to dodge the strike, you are at a huge disadvantage. So the fact that this example that you're framing, that you specifically say nunchucks are effective against inexperienced opponents, again, you're almost, it seems like you're directly acknowledging that nunchucks would be less effective against experienced opponents versus other weapons. And that's a problem, isn't it? As I mentioned before, wouldn't you hope that weapons would be just as effective against experienced opponents versus non-experienced ones? And if you're going to be saying intimidation factor, you can spin around a stick and a sword and be very intimidating as well. I would say just as much with the nunchucks, okay? And so, again, I think there are legitimate, you know, self-defeating points of logic in your own arguments by the fact that you're framing it in such a way that they're excluding important points that when brought back into discussion, your arguments suddenly become very weak.
Now, a sad truth to these traditional weapons is that defense is almost non-existent with these.
Thank you! Yes! And this is, I'm baffled by, if you can, and look, again, I love you, mate, and you can acknowledge that nunchucks are garbage defense. You even say no defense at all. How can you then say that they are comparably effective against any weapon that offers some measure of defense then? So how can you, you look, granted, you're not necessarily saying that, but you are saying that they're a great weapon for self-defense, or by implication that you are, and you say they're great for long to medium distance stuff like that. How can they be great and really good in this respect if they're so garbage at defense?
And remember, any potential benefits that they might offer do not outweigh this massive problem, their lack of defense, as well as many other issues.
But there is one element of defense that nunchucks are phenomenal at, that no one has acknowledged, and that they are incredible at protecting your own virginity. Hey, funnily enough, I actually did lose my virginity after I gave up on nunchucks. Science, it's proven, this case closed. You heard it here, folks, directly from the mouth of Shadowversity. Give up the nunchucks and you will lose your virginity. But my own personal advice is get married first. It's a good conservative plan. I did it. It's worked out great. But to be fair, I did give up the nunchucks in favor of a massive girthy stick instead, so, you know, there's that to consider.
So yeah, defense is essentially non-existent with these, and anybody who tells you that you can grapple with these is on crack.
Get some help.
I love it! This is what I mean, Milani. You're great! I reckon you can make awesome videos, okay?
Okay? You cannot strangle somebody with these like this. If I'm trying to strangle them like this, no. Do never try that. You can't grapple limbs with this. You can't do that. Don't ever try it. The only thing these are good for is quick, powerful strikes.
The only thing they're good at are quick, powerful strikes. The only thing is that? Because I would think that an effective weapon you would want to be able to do far more. Well, like, what about close range strikes? Quick, powerful. It's like, you would want a strike to be quick anyway. But seriously, like, defense, as you mentioned, but there are so many, like, the fact that, again, you seem to be acknowledging the limitations in your own argument, and then how can you then say that they're such a good weapon if you're pointing out such limitations? It's a bit hard to understand. You literally say the only thing they're good at is quick power. If someone's trying to sell me nunchucks and they say, okay, they're crap at defense, but they're good at this, and it's the only thing they're good at is quick, powerful strikes, I'll be like, hang on, you're trying to sell me this? Like, get stick.
And the only thing you can do to dodge big attacks, let's say with a staff or a stick or a baseball bat, you gotta move. Okay? If I'm in my fighting stance and something comes towards me, I gotta move, okay? I gotta move to the side. I gotta move.
Alright, in all seriousness, and look, I'm only making fun of you lightheartedly, okay? I love you, mate. It's all good. Alright, but in all seriousness, do you know what you don't have to do with so many other weapons? I think I already said that. You don't have to move. you can deflect. You can strike into their strike, overpower them with a point of leverage, and get out. You can jab. You can do so many things. Like you're saying that you're essentially saying any powerful strike that's coming out with an nunchuck, you got to move. That's again a problem. It's like you're like having a weapon which you have to move out of every heavier strike coming in. The other thing that nunchucks are really good at is getting girls to move away from you, protecting that virginity. On goes it. All right, look, I know nunchucks are fancy, and that can impress girls. I mean, but it's become a very weebish weapon. And when you really know the limitations, and when you say they're so good, it's like, yeah, that's not impressive. It can be impressive, like there's fancy stuff, but it's not impressive as a combat weapon. Just to clarify.
Another brilliant advantage to the nunchucks is that they don't really require loading up. When we're talking about a baseball bat, we're talking about this. We're talking about the motion before the strike, okay? Even if we're talking about a baton here, we're talking about the load before the strike. With a nunchuck, since we're relying on the whip of the chain, we don't necessarily have to load up. We could be a caveman and say, "Hurrah!" That's not how you use a nunchuck. And plus, if you strike like that, you're probably going to end up hurting yourself again. If I do what's considered a nunchuck a jab, I didn't really have to load up there, okay? No load up. Even if I want to strike across, okay, there's no load up there. There's no load up there.
When you're saying there's no load up in these quick strikes where you're doing like that, right? Where is the back end of the nunchuck? You technically are winding up. You're winding it up from this position to go and hit and then back in. Okay, so absolutely there's an amount of wind up. In actual fact, try and hit with nunchucks without a proper wind up, like there, okay? All you can do is like that. That was pathetically weak. Are you saying that you can't strike with a stick without winding up? Like, really? So you're here, you know, and this is far less wind up than, you know, a flicky nunchuck thing. You're saying you can't do that. You're just there, can't do that.
Adding on to my points about the differentiation of power between these two weapons here, let's talk about the stick for a second, okay? So when we're striking with a solid object like this, we have directional force and we have rotational force coming through the shoulder and coming through the body, okay? It's a very powerful weapon. But when we're talking about the nunchuck, not only are we talking about directional force and rotational force, but because this has a link in the middle, we are also getting centrifugal force, increasing the power of the weapon on the target.
First of all, having a link in like nunchucks does not discount what you are calling centripetal force. So you say centrifugal, and then you show an image of centrifugal force, and by the way, like it's technically a false force. The force that people often misunderstand is the correct term, which is centripetal force. You see, there is an assumption that when something is rotating from an access point, that you feel a pulling out, and you think the force is then pointing in that direction. That's a false force. What you are feeling is the effect of the centripetal force carrier, which is the thing connecting the whatever mass is moving. What you're actually feeling is inertia, okay? And so what this stick wants to do, it wants to move in this direction. And when you connect it to a rotation point, this rotation point stops it from moving in that direction and causes it to rotate. And you're changing the momentum into, I think it's rotational energy. I'm going to fudge some of the descriptions, but it's a far more accurate representation of what you were saying before. And I'm able to redirect that momentum into an actual, you know, curved path. And so what you're trying to, you know, establish or think is that because there's an outwards pull, that when you let go, it's going to fly up. No. If you are swinging something around and you let go at this point, guess what direction it's going to fly in? That way, because it's inertia. And there's actually no true outwards force pulling that way. There's a force pulling it in, which is the centripetal force carrier, the connection point, okay? And because holding here, the centripetal force is causing it to rotate along a curve, but as soon as you let go, it's going to travel in the forward direction in which the momentum, the inertia, wants to carry it. And so your first assumption that these forces don't operate on a stick compared to nunchucks because there's a chain is bafflingly wrong. The next point is that these forces, as I've described, do not increase the force, okay? Like, if anything, energy is lost through the centripetal force carrier because it's causing a change in the momentum. And so therefore, some energy has to be lost because there's a change in the momentum, and more energy would have been conserved if it was just moving in a straight direction. Because what I think you're trying to say is that when you swing, well, you're saying with nunchucks, so you're saying because you swing nunchucks, you're saying that the rotation point is here, when you're discounting that even with a straight stick, it has a point of rotation right here. It's rotating along that, point of axis, as opposed to nunchucks, which can rotate along there. If anything, this rotation causes a smaller lever, which means it's actually going to hit with less rotational energy, less leverage than something that is rotating with a longer distance between the end and the point of rotation, the axis point, because the tip is moving faster. See, because it's longer, the tip will be moving much faster compared to this type of movement because the arm, all right, the rotating point is shorter. And then you seem to assume that because you feel a pulling sensation with that rotation that it's increasing the energy. It's like, no, it's not how physics work, I'm sorry. The true things at play here is basic inertia and momentum and the centripetal force carrier. Centrifugal force, as you're thinking, or centripetal force, is a false force. There's no actual outwards pulling force when you swing, okay? There's an inwards pulling force, the centripetal force, because you're redirecting the momentum along a circular or curved thing from an axis point. And I went through all of that to basically explain your analysis of the physics of this. It's wrong. Very wrong.
If you ever know how strong whips can be, just think of that similar to a nunchuck, right? So we release, and the weapon begins to whip towards the opponent and creates a very powerful snap.
Oh boy! Oh, you're not equating whips to nunchucks because you have no idea how whips work, okay? Alright, so when you whip something and you do a thing, you impart energy over a large curve in the whip. But what happens is, as that, momentum energy travels down the whip, it is getting smaller. So if you ever see a whip, especially a long one, you see them whip it, okay? You'll see a loop happen in the whip, and then it starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, energy is lost as it's progressing, but it's also being condensed over a smaller area, a smaller curve.
The curve that you put in a whip is also pulling on the other end. There is less of the whip that is getting pulled on the more that curve travels down. But it's relatively the same amount of energy pulling on less and less mass. And this is when the conservation of momentum of energy kicks in, because momentum is a property of mass and velocity. That curve is pulling on less mass because it's traveling down the whip, and the more it travels down, there is less whip for it to pull on, and it's also tapered, so it's getting lighter. The curve is pulling on less mass, so it picks up velocity, conservation of momentum. And this increases as the curve travels down the whip, increasing the speed of the curve, so much so that when you get to the tip, it actually cracks the speed of sound.
Okay. When you swing a nunchucks, man, it's looking so good. When you swing nunchucks, is there any reduction in curve? Are you compressing the energy in any measure? No, you're not. They do not operate the same at all. Apart from maybe, is there a curve somewhere? No. So the equivalence you're making between nunchucks and whips is all... I like you, but this is... bad argument, man.
Think of that similar to a nunchuck, right? So we release, and the weapon begins to whip towards the opponent and creates a very powerful snap. It's not like a thud. It's not like a thud of a stick. It's a whack. It's a snap.
The nunchucks do not crack the speed of sound like a whip does. At all. There's no condensing of energy over a smaller curve, okay? It's not happening.
Now, Now, one of these points that these practitioners bring up is, oh, but if you get too close to a person, nunchucks become useless. They lose all of their leverage and the chain wraps around the target. If you've ever handled any other weapon in your life, you would know that that occurs with every other weapon ever made.
Every other weapon. So that means if someone gets close to me, you literally say, you know, they become useless and they lose their leverage. Those are the 2 points. And then you say that happens to every other weapon. Tell me, how do I lose leverage? And how does this become useless? A dagger if someone comes close to me. I'm happy to wait for your explanation here. I mean, look, are you being hyperbolic and overemphasizing? Yeah, but I mean, you're very categorical. You say every other weapon in the sense that excuses how junk and garbage nunchucks become at close range because it happens to every. No, it doesn't happen to every other weapon. So close-up strikes with the nunchucks, okay, they do not hurt. I've done it to myself heaps of times. Now I'm wearing a mic pack, so I don't want to strike it, hit it, and break it. But like you can actually whack yourself at this part pretty hard, and you feel a bit of whiplash behind, okay? Now, it's funny, the whiplash might cause Boromir to wobble a bit there, but that's not going to stop an attacker. It's not going to hurt. And so, when you're really close up, nunchucks are so limited in what they can do. It's like, oh, they're yes, you know, it'll hurt. I'm not saying it won't, okay? But you can do far less with nunchucks than you can with so many other weapons, and what you can do with those other weapons are far more effective and can cause greater damage. As we showed outside, the stick retains a high level of effectiveness. You can still strike in many ways at very close range, let alone something like a knife. But you said every other weapon! You said that! What makes what you said so much worse, you actually said if you've handled any other weapon in your life, you would know this happens to any other weapon. No, it's actually almost the inverse. It's almost like if you have handled any other weapon, even something as humble as a knife, you would know that they still retain full effectiveness and leverage at very close range. So it's almost like you could only say something like that, the very thing you said, if you've never handled any other weapon in your whole life. Just like, that's the implication. That's how bafflingly bad that statement was. Almost to the point where that you might be trolling. And I can't, like, it could be possible, but you seem very genuine and serious. But if you are, I don't care. I'm going to be addressing, like, it's fully unironic because it's fun.
If we have a sword here, this is based on a katana, but we're going to use it as an example. But, of course, if I get this closer, the person charges me. Can I cut? I can, but not very well.
Not very well. This, unfortunately, is revealing Milani's own inexperience with swords. Because when in close range and being able to place the blade on the target and drawing the blade down in a wide slashing cut along the full length of the blade can cause insanely devastating cuts. So assuming that you can't cut very well with a sword in close range is shockingly incorrect, and as I mentioned, revealing quite a level of inexperience and lack of understanding in how swords can be used effectively.
Now, if we're talking in terms of concealment, right here I have a 2-foot stick baton, brilliant for striking, but I can't really conceal it in my jacket, and I can't really conceal it on my belt without being obviously noticed.
Hey, Oz.
Oh, hey, Shad.
How you going?
Didn't see that.
Yeah. You look like you're not holding any weapons, Oz.
Well, I'm a bit excited. I have a stick down my pants.
Do you want to show me your stick?
Sure.
Oh my goodness!
Where did this come from?
Where did that come from? That's a big stick you had in your pants. Now look.
Hold my stick? Gentle with my stick, thank you.
Daddy. Now, granted, okay, you know, you might have to just walk with it, but even if you're just going to do this, you know, just casual walking around, of course you can conceal a bloody stick, okay? Now, look, are they as concealable as nunchucks? Probably not, but you can get smaller sticks, like if you cut it here, okay? I reckon it'll be just as effective, if not more so, than nunchucks by a large margin, right? There is so many things why you would want to pick other weapons, like a stick, over nunchucks, and yes, you can conceal them if you need to, okay? In actual fact, you can explain away a stick much better, because, you know, it's a walking stick, so they're great. if you get caught carrying with nunchucks, what other excuse do you have to hold them? They're like, what, they were rice flails in the past? Not anymore. They're nothing but a weapon in the modern day. Whereas this, you can actually get a fancy walking stick and perfectly legal. You can explain why I have them. We need to bring them back. Look at this. Look how great this is. This is a mace. This is like this is a solid hitting thing, and it is classy walking stick. Dapper, mate. We need to bring walking sticks back into popularity. Look at this pose right here. You just look classy right here. And then you have an awesome weapon. Like, it's actually really, really good. And lethal too, as well. They're great. In actual fact, the knob on this gives it such counterbalance that it becomes a really effective, like, oof. Man, I know, the knob would be way more deadly than hitting with the tip, granted. But you can thrust really well with the tip. Yeah, you would want to give them the full knob, but I mean, that tip, you can thrust so deeply with it.
Retractable batons, and they are quite brilliant. You can put them in a pocket, you can put them almost anywhere. They're very concealable. But nunchucks can too be very concealable. For example, in this clip, you probably didn't even know I had one on me. It was just sitting in my back belt right here.
I mean, in context of the video, I knew you had the nunchucks behind you by a mile away. It was quite obvious. But by the way, like, a gun is way more concealable than nunchucks as well. I mean, you have no idea the type of weapons I have concealed right now. Just letting you know.
And if you ever question the lethality of this weapon, just have a look at our friends at Zombie Go Boom over there.
That Zombie Go Boom clip. I love the guys. Zombie Go Boom, great guys. But gee, it's almost like they were loading up in the strike. And do you really think that you wouldn't be able to achieve as detrimental results, if not worse, with a stick of same mass and length? Of course you, like, a stick would be able to blow past that as well. And by the way, that's a very specific, aimed strike at a static target, okay? Much, much harder to pull off a strike like that in real life. And if you can pull off a strike like that, you could have pulled off a strike with as much wind up with a stick and produce even more dangerous, lethal, damaging results. But what if they, block? What if they put something in the way that caused the nunchucks to hit the chains first and you lose all power? Because, if you hit someone, for a fair comparison, I got to downgrade my stick. But if you did a really big wind-up strike like that and someone blocked where, the chain would normally be on nunchucks, you could still break their arm. On nunchucks, it's not going to, it'll whip around and it'll hit with whatever it hits with far less force, but it might, most likely, if it's far enough away, won't hit anything. And this is a weird thing. I never said nunchucks can't hit with power. Alright? And you think by saying nunchucks can hit with power makes them a good weapon. No, okay? By that logic, everyone will be using rocks. But they don't. Why? Because there are so many other weapons that are so much better than rocks. And you get more leverage, more control, more power. Okay? It's like, nunchucks are like the rocks of the weapon world. No, they're probably worse. And, anyway. Maybe we should review rocks. Rock versus nunchuck. You could probably throw rocks better than nunchucks. They're more easily available. You could use them in slingshots, but that's using a slingshot. Come on. If you just rock, I wonder if you could hit harder, depending on the size of the rock and depending on the geometry. Rock versus nunchuck.
These weapons were truly as useless as many claim. They wouldn't have lasted this long. They'd be lost to the sands of time.
You do realize they kind of were lost to the sands of time. Bruce Lee reintroduced them as a popular weapon. Before Bruce Lee, try and see how popular they were. Like, really. They lasted so long. Yeah, well, did they last long as a popular, viable weapon that everyone was picking over in favor of so many other weapons? No. There's nearly no historical account of nunchucks being used, even at all historically, or as a prominent, weapon. So if there is some account, it's very obscure, so hard to find, and so many other weapons are recorded. Have a look how often clubs have been used, okay? There's lots of records of clubs being used all throughout time. Okay, how many records are there of nunchucks? I'm waiting. Yeah, Bruce Lee films, but they're not real. They're not historical accounts.
But they've been modernized and considered a lethal weapon in many countries, which is why they've been banned.
Nunchucks have not been banned because they're uniquely more lethal than other weapons, okay? They're banned because of the overhype around them. And if anything, like, if there was any validity ban, but I don't actually think legislators are that insightful to, you know, account for this, that they're banned because they're so dangerous to the user, okay? But no, they've been hyped up in pop culture being so insanely deadly. Like, ninja stars. Do you know how lethal ninja stars, if you actually throw them, like, yeah, they'll cut you, but it is so unlikely to kill someone. Like a ninja star versus a dagger, the lethality comparison is insane. The dagger is so much more lethal, yet ninja stars are banned. And like, can you ban knives? Because knives are a useful tool, obviously, so of course not. But yeah, the fact that nunchucks are banned does not mean that they're uniquely good, because they're banned because the people who are making those laws are stupid. Do you know Kinder Surprises are banned in America? Is that because they're a uniquely deadly weapon? Or is it because people do stupid things with them? That's like, you know, nunchucks. People do really stupid things. But like, were they, I don't think like I said, I don't think I can give the credit to the legislators for that, but were they banned because they're uniquely dangerous to the user?
I don't think I need to explain much about a hard piece of oak flying at your head, or a hard piece of steel flying at your head from the end of a chain. It's rather obvious the kind of damage that a weapon like this can do.
On account for so many people who believe nunchucks are so much better than they are, I would actually say it's not nearly as obvious as people assume, or as you're assuming. Because when you actually do a proper comparison, then you find how effective they are. Now, I never said that they can't hit hard. Of course they can. But does that mean you should always choose them over it? No, like, because again, just saying that they're great because they hit hard discounts so many problems, like problems you yourself pointed out. They're garbage for their defense, and they can't grapple at all. If anyone tells you can grapple, what was it on grapple or something? You said they're on crack, okay? And so, if you yourself could acknowledge so many profound, large problems with nunchucks, how can you say that they're so great then? And again, we're not making the standard on a great weapon is something you can hit with, because then a rock is a great weapon. And why isn't everyone using rocks? No, a great weapon is one that is versatile, that increases your lethality to larger extents with less amounts of training, that you can just pick it up and you're instantly more effective, okay? A good weapon is one that is not dangerous to use. I've mentioned so many reasons why, okay? Those are the reasons, the standards that we should determine if a weapon is good, not if it can just hit hard, because you can pick up anything and hit anything hard with it. It doesn't make it a good weapon.
I beg you not to listen to people online, but rather do your research, watch experienced people talk about this weapon.
Don't listen to people online. You do realize you're online talking about it. But then you say, listen to experienced people. But a year, 2 years isn't experience enough in your book. But, I mean, what about the people who have had 20, 30 years that agree with me? There's a lot of them, by the way. Have a look at the comments of my videos. You know, don't listen to them because they're wrong according to you. But the reality is, you have said some profoundly incorrect things, like in orders of magnitude, like some that is baffling slow, like your misunderstanding of centripetal force, for one, like incredible, like it was derpy, your demonstration that you feel that every weapon loses its effectiveness and leverage when people close every weapon, like you said those things, okay? So unfortunately, with your 16 years experience, if anything, you are proving that experience doesn't mean spit, and it does not save people from being able to say tremendously stupid things. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying I've said stupid things in the past as well. Own it, okay? And you have said some amazingly stupid things in that video, and I've pointed them out, all right? And so experience hasn't saved you from that. So experience should not be the say-all, be-all, and end-all on figuring out if something is correct or not. How about you disregard the disingenuous ways of dismissing people's argument and address the argument itself, the logic itself, okay? Because if truth is said by a king or a pauper, by a genius or an idiot, it doesn't matter. It is truth. It's correct, okay? Where it comes from means spit if it is correct. I think I got that off my chest.
When learning the nunchucks, you have to be super careful.
When learning with a stick, you need to be careful. Not super careful, because amazingly, they don't have such a high propensity to hit you back when you just go like... But, I mean, I would say a weapon that you have to be super careful with to not hit yourself or injure yourself would be a pretty crap weapon. You'd think so.
It's normal when you're learning to, get a bonk on the head or get a little, a hit there, but when you're practicing any other weapon, when do you not occasionally bonk yourself?
I'm sorry, Milani, but you saying you actually have hit yourself with a stick? Now, look, I know accidents can happen. I'll put my hand up and say I've accidentally hit myself with a sword when I was being dumb as a kid. Granted, okay? But I've legitimately not hit myself with any other weapon that I've trained with, apart from nunchucks. Because every other time I've trained with weapons, I've tried to be very cautious and careful. When you're being very cautious and careful, there's a very low chance you'll ever hit yourself with a stick, okay? It could happen once or twice, you know, granted, but compare that to the amount of times people hit themselves with nunchucks. Is there a bit of an unfair? Of course, just to say, oh, you might hurt yourself with these other weapons, that is what is called a false equivalence, okay? Because the amount of times people hit themselves with sticks is vastly less than people ever have hit themselves with nunchucks. And I can say honestly that I've never hit myself with a stick. And I've trained with quarterstaff or bow staff quite a lot, okay? Never hit myself once. Funny that. And oddly enough, even though I have hit myself with a sword when I was being stupid as a kid, I've never hit myself with a sword when I was actually being serious, right? And actually, I was training, you know, the whole movements, the spinning. So you can do a lot of spinning with other weapons, and I've never hit myself while training to spin with other weapons apart from nunchucks. One of the reasons why other weapons are so much better is that if I'm pointing it away from my body, even, you know, in any direction, it's not going to hit me. The only way it can hit me is if my actual handheld point is pointing towards me in some direction. Change that with nunchucks, okay? If I'm holding it here, it can hit me. If I'm holding it here, even if I'm holding it here, it can still hit me in the arm and things. In actual fact, it doesn't matter where I'm holding it. It has a potential to hit me because of this, you know, the way it's made.
Being a professional martial artist in the modern day requires a couple things. One, it requires that you're open-minded. Two, it requires that you look into any matters that you plan on educating a large mass of people on.
So to be a professional martial artist, you need to be open-minded and you need to look into things that you're talking about, okay? Now you do realize, potentially your video can reach a massive amount of people, and you have said some, as I've already pointed out, astoundingly incorrect things. Like just on a factual basic level, that every weapon loses their effectiveness and leverage when they're close range. You said that. Your probably the way you describe centripetal or centrifugal force. And there's a whole host of other things, okay? And so you have failed at your own standard. So does that mean you're not a professional martial artist then? I wouldn't establish such an arbitrary standard like that. I mean, gee, what does it take to be a professional martial artist? Someone who teaches it, practices it professionally? I would expect a certain level of skill. You got the skill, granted, okay? But these arbitrary other standards you're making, yeah, be careful of that, because as I've just pointed out, you've failed on one of them quite significantly. And being open-minded, I'm not sure, I don't know. You've been very dogmatically opposed to acknowledging, well, you've acknowledged the flaws of nunchucks in some areas, but in other areas, you've been very dogmatically closed-minded about how legitimately flawed they are, okay? And you've strawman me in some of my positions, which also shows being a bit closed-minded, because if you wanted to address me properly, you would address my actual arguments. So those are two standards that you've established that you've just failed at.
You can't just have a year or two of experience in a weapon, especially if you were younger, and then look back on it and try and create this ideology that it's garbage.
Yeah, I'm not trying to create a thing that is garbage. I've just been looking at it objectively on the same standard that I compare fantasy weapons, okay? And it was a fun, interesting realization. I wasn't trying to force it, that when I started thinking about the nunchucks, I was like, oh, wow. When you really think about it, they're incredibly bad. Like, there are so many problems with it. And so this wasn't me trying to make them bad because I wanted to diss nunchucks or weebs or things like that. Hey, I have some weebiness in me. I love the katana, okay? You know? No, I wasn't trying to do that, okay? I'm just applying the same... And I've criticized other things, and we're going to get to that because I criticize the flail and other things just as brutally for having tremendous problems.
As modern-day martial artists, we need to educate ourselves in all arts and all cultures.
That's a very interesting standard you're trying to promote there. As modern-day martial artists, you need to educate yourself in all cultures and all arts? Wow! Wow! I mean, I was supposed to say too. I mean, you'd think that people who love karate learn karate. You don't like if you don't want to learn other things, you don't have to. But just, like, you have to in all cultures, like all things. I mean, I would assume you would mean all other martial art traditions, but you didn't make that qualify. You're saying educate yourself on all cultures as well? That's a really random one. All right. I guess those ancient Aztecs, you got to educate yourself on those. Otherwise, you know, you're not living up to the standard of what a proper modern day martial artist should be. Aztec fighting systems, come on. Where is it? No, you don't. Of course you don't need to. Research what you like, okay? Granted, if you're going to be criticizing something like that, it's good to research it, as I've done, and compare it against other weapons to get a point of reference as well. That's probably good as well. But the thing is, you don't necessarily even need to do that to draw a correct conclusion. I mean, if you just basic principles of logic, you look at nunchucks like, oh, you mean you need to train and like vast amounts to just not hit yourself with these weapons to reach a equal or worse standard of lethality as you can with other weapons that you don't need to go through all that training? It's a great comment. I pinned it on my second video because by that standard, nunchucks are automatically crap. I'd actually think all other arguments just adds fuel onto the fire, but you could end the argument right there and determine that nunchucks are crap with no experience in martial arts or anything else.
And create an opinion based upon logic. And not only while creating an opinion based on logic, it needs to be in respect of the culture too.
Huh. So hang on, why do you think I don't respect Japanese culture? You're saying that if you criticize one thing that is worthy of criticism, you therefore disrespect all parts of that culture? Because that is utter crap. No, absolutely not, okay? I have tremendous respect for many parts of the Japanese culture. Definitely not all, because guess what? There were things in past Japanese culture, especially in the feudal period, that were horrendous. And you saying that you should respect it? The horrendous things? Like, think about that. You know, are you saying, like, something that I think was horrible and evil? Human sacrifice. Like, disgustingly evil. Are you saying that I can't criticize that because the Aztecs did it? Huh. What about cultures that practice slavery? Saying we shouldn't criticize slavery because just they're their cultures?
Respect. Why did this culture keep this around? Why is this significant to this culture? We can't go slamming something that has been around for a long time and been important to a group of people that we're not a part of. We need to do our best to respect other cultures and respect their arts.
Slavery and human sacrifice was around for a long time that we weren't a part of. Shouldn't criticize it. We weren't a part of it. It's part of their culture. Are you serious? Now look, what I'm saying here, that is not a false equivalence. It's actually an example of exaggeration. By exaggerating a point with another example, I'm revealing the flaws in it. And it's real, like you're saying you just can't criticize something from another culture because it's just from another. No, of course you can. And when you criticize that thing, that doesn't mean that you disrespect or dislike everything else about that culture. So don't try and vilify me if that's your implication, because come on, man.
We shouldn't be throwing weapons on the ground.
Nunchucks are garbage, man.
Okay?
Like,
No,
seriously.
That's not respectful.
That's not respectful to nunchucks, I agree. But I also don't care, because they're garbage and they deserve to be called out as such. Is it disrespectful to the culture? No. No, not overall, because I think there's great things about Japanese culture. I think the katana is a beautiful sword. It's not the best sword in the world, by any means, but it can do some things really, really good. And, I've covered the katana heaps already. Japanese cuisine. There's this new restaurant, which is authentic Japanese cuisine, open up. Oh, love it. So good. Okay? And, by the way, I criticize other things from any culture. I don't care if it's Japanese, if it's European, Middle Eastern, or whatever, okay? If there's a crap weapon, I'll point it out as crap. If there's a crap practice, like slavery, or human sacrifice, or ritualistic suicide that is imposed upon by social conditioning, things like that, seppuku, yeah, that's also barbaric and not good, okay? I don't think people should commit suicide because of being shamed. I think that's a terrible thing. Also, really bad, killing people when they leave a religion or don't profess to a religion. It happened in Europe, Inquisition and stuff like that. Horrible. Evil, all right? And yeah, I am a Christian, and I'll point out things in my own Christian heritage and stuff like that as being horrible as well. I'm no respecter when it comes to that. If it's bad or crap or inefficient or even evil, we should point it out as bad. Because you know what happens if we don't? We just continue making the same bullcrap mistakes. Propping up weapons as being great when they're really garbage, getting people injured inadvertently when they could have picked a much better result, or practicing same social conditions and practices that are wholly evil and everything because we don't point it out because, offense and culture's not. No! If it's bad, it deserves to be called out as it.
I wouldn't make an hour-and-a-half long video explaining why something I did for a year when I was younger is trash and garbage. Otherwise, you'd be hearing me talk about how soccer is a garbage sport, which is not the case.
Are you sure about that? I love soccer, okay? But if someone has a valid argument to share, I'll listen, I'll hear. I mean, and by the way, you don't need to practice something for a year to figure out if it's bad or not. And I've already covered, you don't even practice at all if it's so blatantly obvious, like nunchucks. You don't need to try something for massive lengths of time to find out if you still like it or not. You could try it once and see flaws and problems in it, and not even, you could observe and see other people doing it, and if you approach it in a logical thing with good point frames of reference stuff and other good sources and references and things, you can figure out it's bad without any experience in it at all. Because as I mentioned, if it's correct, it doesn't come from a master or a noob. It's correct.
I only did it for a year and it just didn't interest me. It's a fantastic sport. But my point is that you can't slam something you only spent a year or two learning.
Yes, you can. I mean, can I slam it if I practice for a year and one day? What's the distinction? When is it enough? And it's actually not enough, because the amount of time doesn't matter to you. Because if I practice it for 2 months and then said it was great, you would say, well, you clearly have had enough experience to figure out that it was good, because I agree with you. So the point isn't the experience. The point is that we are disagreeing. And because we're disagreeing, you are then now saying my experience isn't enough, which is an arbitrary distinction. If it's arbitrary with no actual definitive thing to establish what the experience is, it means nothing. It's a useless argument, and it's pointless being brought up and trying to inject it in it. The only point of bringing such a thing in is an appeal to authority, which is a disingenuous, debate tactic, which means nothing. Use the logic of the argument itself to establish that you're correct or not, because the authority that you're appealing to, again, you're just pointing out the air. And it's whatever amount, because if I had 20 years experience and still had the same opinion as many other people, what then? Is it right now, even if my opinion is exactly the same? No, you don't. I've covered it already. You don't need all the experience to reach a correct conclusion.
The nunchucks are not a useless weapon. They're not garbage.
Never said they were wholly useless. I did say they were garbage, okay? They are garbage. And I think people deserve to know. I dropped my stick. I'm picking up my stick. Good thing it didn't swing back and hit me. If a weapon did something like that, it would be pretty garbage, wouldn't it? So yes, I never said they were utterly useless. But maybe, I'm reconsidering, because I do think sometimes maybe your bare hands are better. But what I will say, and I'll say it again, you can hit harder with nunchucks than your bare fist, okay? They can be hard-hitting things. Not as hard as a stick, okay? But they are most definitely garbage. Look, I hold no offense to you at all, mate. I love your energy. I think you're great, okay? I think your arguments were as garbage as the nunchucks are as an effective weapon compared to other weapons. But no offense, and look, I warned you I'd be going in hard against your arguments in that comment, okay? And so I'm not sure if you were aware that I would be this aggressive or not, but I appreciate you saying, look, I'm game. And guys, don't send any hate towards him, okay? He wanted to engage, and good on him for doing it, and his video was a lot of fun as well. And I actually think you have a huge potential in being a really successful YouTuber, okay? You got great skills, great enthusiasm, and you're fun and engaging, so you could go somewhere with it. And look, thank you for making a video. And the reason why I'm replying is because I think a lot of what you said was representative of what a lot of other, defenders of nunchucks were saying, and so that's one of the reasons I wanted to address it, because you can even see it in some of the comments under that video where like, this is what I wanted to say and stuff like that. And even though this is what people have been wanting to say, they were really bad arguments and they deserve to be counted, and it was also for a bit of fun as well. So, well, no hard feelings, but thank you, I appreciate it. Also, I appreciate you guys for watching. Nunchucks are terrible, and I'll see you next time. So until then, farewell.
In the northern hemisphere, there is a nation-state called Sweden, and this includes the island of Gotland, on which there is a town called Visby. You see here its medieval walls. When they are not busy having pandemics or wars, every normal August there is Sweden's greatest medieval festival, and I have been there twice. I arrived by ferry and immediately saw the old town in all its medievalness. There are parades, theatrical shows, lectures, a large market, and medieval-themed everything. There is a fine museum there too, which one day I may show you around. Very good canteen. Let's see what's on sale in the market.
That is 70.
Yes, but you also need that.
Beads, glass, bone, metal, beads. There is a lot that can be done with birch bark, and in Scandinavia they had a lot of birch to work with. These are ladles, in case you're wondering. And here is a trumpet. What is this stick, do you think? It's, yeah, it's a broom. Okay, no great surprise there, but wait! These look like mystic staffs of power. Here we see some rather fine glassware, simultaneously hideous and impressive. Neither my budget nor my rucksack space extended this far, mind. Oh dear, that is not authentic. He's wearing it back to front. Folding authentic chairs. Basketwork backpacks seem to predate the cloth ones we're used to today. Oh, and don't leave without a cannon. Only 26,000 kroner. That's over 2,200 quid. Roll up and place your bets, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Furs, oh yes, plenty of those. Which way will the mouse go? We have a winner. Every year there seems to be a fashion, and this was the year of the straw hat. I nearly got one, but went instead for felt, cheaper and easier to stuff into luggage. Some people recognised me, and these days the thing to do is ask nicely for a selfie. So I did.
My goodness, my hair is spectacularly awful today. Well, still, it's a trademark.
So the technical term for this is twirling.
Fire twirling, yes.
Fire twirling.
Well,
without the fire.
That was just practice.
This is the safety version.
Yes.
It's all right. It's dead.
Very sunny. Is that hat any good for sunburn or shading you?
No, it's for this, yes.
Oh.
It's very nice. So that's why they had pointy hats, basically, to cover the hair like that.
Of course.
It's very good.
At least I hope it's dead. Quick, look normal. Dead. Authentic boots. More authentic boots. I'm yet to be tempted to buy a boar skin. The hairs are very uncomfortably bristly and coarse, which limits its use a lot. Ah, now that deer skin is a much nicer thing. Ah, authentic oh no, inauthentic boots. Musical instruments. Tempting. Some had plastic modern reeds. It's a compromise.
Oh, wow. But
to play something?
of course.
Oops. Vasilius a rookie.
So when was this designed?
About 1500s.
1500s?
Yes.
Right. Do you know what it's called?
It's called a nyckelharpa.
Nyckelharpa.
So in English it's a key harp.
A key harp. So we have 3 layers of keys here, and they all have a slightly different function. So,
first one goes for the first string.
Yep.
And the second,
Yep.
second string.
Second string, so the middle peg moves.
And for the third,
The bottom one moves the end peg only.
Yeah.
But you can only bow 1 string at a time.
Yeah, you can go for you can actually go with both. But I'm not that skilled yet.
All right.
So that we start here, go up to the next one.
Right.
Third or fourth.
So there are only actually 4 strings that you can bow, and the rest are just vibrating in sympathy for harmonics.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Yeah, no problem. You're welcome.
particularly like the use of the Darth Vader theme towards the end there.
Exactly. Very important.
The triple beige flag. Beige. They're setting up here at the market at Visby for another day's trading, and who better to talk to about how things are run here than the organizer, the chief organizer of the whole kit and caboodle? Yes, it's Björn Sundberg himself.
Hello there.
So please give us some idea of the grand scale of operations here. How many market stalls do you have, for instance?
We have 170 market stalls, and roughly 170, and about 40,000 visitors over 8 days, 530 events during the week, and a shitload of people doing stuff.
That many?
Yeah, that many.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for being so scientific.
Yeah.
So how does this compare? Is this the biggest medieval festival on Earth?
Well, there are some other medieval festivals that would be considered bigger. It's definitely the biggest one in Sweden, and arguably the biggest in Scandinavia, and we like to say biggest in Northern Europe.
Right.
But we have those Germans who always make things in a grander scale.
Oh, all right. And I know that some of what the Americans call Renaissance fairs, they get pretty big too.
They get definitely pretty big. Since we're on a sort of desolate island in the middle of the Baltic Sea.
It's not desolate. It's not desolate at all.
No. But still, if you compare this region to regions, say in Central Europe, you have a huge number of people having an easy time traveling back and forth. This is an island, you have to travel here. So that puts a different scale to operations.
But doesn't that also contribute to the specialness of it?
Absolutely,
That you are in this
absolutely.
isolation?
We love this island, and we think it's the absolute perfect setting for this medieval festival. And the town of Visby is obviously a good setting with the ring wall and also the buffer zone to the modern buildings outside of the city. Which makes it ideal to actually witness not only the inside of the old town, but also seeing the old town and the ring wall from a small distance, and also getting to use that environment with medieval camps and stuff. So we love this setting. It's brilliant.
It's difficult to think of a better one. But what else makes Visby so particularly special? Why do people, for instance, come here year after year after year? You seem to have an amazingly loyal customer base. For instance, every year they sell a badge that represents that year's festival, and you see people everywhere with the badges from loads of previous years worn very proudly.
Absolutely, we have an amazing crowd that keeps coming back year after year, and it's actually we've calculated this, and we know that there's an 80% chance if you come here once that you'll come back, and the average visitor coming here has been here 4.22 times before, so it's so yeah. They're loyal, and we love that.
Yes, 4.22. That is impressive. And they're from all around Scandinavia and Germany and those parts, are they?
Yes, we have a vast majority of visitors from Sweden. And, last time we calculated, we actually had 92% of the visitors came from Sweden, and then it was divided upon rest of the world.
Where are we now?
We're in Gantarnas camp, which is a group, an organization that works with the Medieval Week. So it started up as a camp for those who did night guard duty at the market, and they wanted to stay close, of course, so that they wouldn't have to walk that very far. And then it has grown, so it's a sort of small exhibition camp. We have craftsmen and a few traders and people trying to show medieval life in quite a small scale. Very cozy.
It is. I would say that one of the things that, for me, that makes Visby more special than many other reenactment-style events is that usually when you go to a reenactment event, almost everyone's dressed as a soldier. Whereas here, almost everyone is dressed as a carpenter, a cook, a baker, an ordinary person living an ordinary life, and you have women and old people and children and so forth. It's not just men in their prime wearing armour.
That's a good point. That's a good point, and something we're very happy about to see. The wide scale of people, and also the wide scale of, how would you say, not seriousness, but knowledge and interest in the reenactment sphere. I mean, we have people that basically just put a cloth bag over their head and a rope
All right.
around their waist and walk around wearing a six-pack of beer and enjoying the first medieval experience. And hopefully they'll come back and get interested in what is lying behind here and being inspired. And also, I mean, hopefully there's a role model for everyone here. We have the knights, definitely. We have the soldiers. But also quite a big focus on crafts and trying to spread that knowledge. And, well, I'm happy that you say it. And we're actively trying to keep that going.
So how do you foster this atmosphere that we want everyone to be in kit, but you don't have to have the very best kit to take part?
Well, by being inclusive. If you... we're trying to actually work with inspiring and not criticizing. So, but obviously there's a lot of people going on. We can't control everyone, but if we make a good atmosphere going on here, I think that we could spread that idea as far as we can, especially when we're working with the reenactment groups that have very high standards, like Battle of Eastby, and they're very conscious of their role, and they are strict. You cannot get in there if you have the wrong shoes. You cannot get in there if you have the non-riveted chainmail, for example. So, but still. They are there to inspire and show that this is a way you could do it, but not criticizing others who are doing it a different way. So, and they're conscious, and we're trying to spread that idea across the entire festival.
Well, you seem to have succeeded because the streets are full of people in all manner of kit, but it's reasonably high and reasonably consistent as well, so that when you walk around town, you do sometimes get the feeling that you're in a proper medieval world.
And we're happy to see that the Swedish reenactment scene is extremely high quality in general. It's developed amazingly for the last decade or more.
So as chief organizer, then, do you see it as your mission to introduce the greatest number of people to this as a hobby and to, at the same time, try to raise standards?
Yes to both questions, but also a lot of other things. We want people to have a good time when they come here. That's basically the best way to get someone into the whole hobby is to have a great time. And there's something hopefully for everyone. 530 events should give you something to see, even if you're just a family with modern clothes and kids varying ages. You should find something. Maybe come back next year, buy yourself a tunic and get going. So, yeah, yes to both questions.
Okay. Well, you seem to be succeeding.
Oh, thank you. I'm very happy to say so.
Spoons. Cloth. Torsion-powered bolt thrower! Sub-devastating. Inclusive, he said. Well, yes, you can see that it's possible to get away with dreadlocks, modern spectacles, and even at the very extreme, an assassin's uniform from a video game. That's right, an assassin's uniform. Possibly the stupidest idea for a uniform possible. Still, there were no Space Marines. There are loads of ruined churches here, suggesting some terrible catastrophe like earthquake or the ravages of a brutal war, but actually the place just got a lot poorer and they didn't maintain them.
7.
A rather nice comb in a holder to protect the teeth, made of bone if I recall correctly. Here you see me tackle the challenge of opening it in my offhand whilst videoing with the other and keeping it in shot. Yeah, that's got it. And back. And back. Yes, spectacles were invented early enough to be called medieval. In the 13th century they start showing up in paintings. In the 14th century they became common. Triple-wicked lamps there. I rather fancied this pilgrim flask, but I was skint.
Now we have a chap here, and he's wearing patterns, and he's the first person I've seen wearing them. And as you can see, they are wooden, and So how do you get on with these walking on cobbles?
Well, it works quite well. Of course, you don't want to wear them when there are loose sand or loose gravels, because that's very difficult. But
Right.
cobbles works well, stone works well, and well, regular streets works well.
What about a very steep cobbled street, though? Isn't that difficult?
It's very difficult, so usually just take them off and wear them, or carry them.
Right. So so steep slopes on cobbles, not the best. Now, one thing, of course, you don't have to cope with is an awful lot of animal dung in the streets, which is perhaps one reason they wore them.
No, it's quite more hygienic nowadays.
But you're the only person I've seen so far wearing these. Was there not a fashion recently for wearing them?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because, like, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago here in Visby, a lot of merchants were selling patterns. A lot of people was wearing patterns. There were like 5, 6 different reenacted types of patterns, and everyone was wearing patterns. A lot of my friends are wearing them, and the next year, no one. Maybe people thought them too unpractical.
Right, that does sound as though they tried them out. Oh, patterns, brilliant, I'll feel so authentic. And then they thought, stuff this for a lark, it's too flipping difficult on steep cobbled streets, and I'm ending up kicking them off and carrying them half the time.
Yeah, it could be difficult. You're not as fast as you used to be, but I feel it's...
Right, now I'm interrupting this interview during the edit to explain this chap's sudden appearance. I was standing in a road to shoot this interview, and I positioned us to give passers-by plenty of room, and to give me a nice background for the picture. As I recorded, I noticed a group of people coming along, one of many, and yet alarm bells sounded in my mind with this particular group. Sure enough, one of its members, as feared, seeing what we were doing, broke away from his fellows and took this path in order to get in my shot. I continued the interview and did not move the camera, but I did turn my head to look back at him after he had passed, and he looked back at me with an expression on his face, making it clear that he considered what he had just done to have been a triumph of wit. I have never shared this opinion.
Good trade-off, because I get I don't have to wear out my regular shoes.
Right. So, how much wear have you got out of these? Notice you don't seem to have any surface on the bottom of them, so these just
plain wood. Quite worn. They used to be like 1.5 centimeters higher. So
wow. So that's a lot
like
you've worn off them.
1 centimeters of wood, and it's quite heavy wood because they are supposed to be for war.
So you've been walking around a lot on modern asphalt, which is very abrasive.
That is a problem, mostly.
And of course, now I'm trying to interview you, they start banging drums in the background.
Well, it's in Visby. It's medieval week.
I saw a lot of rawhide bottles. I didn't know what the evidence for these in the medieval period was, but they seemed worth investigation.
I didn't get a viewer. I'm playing on YouTube.
Very light. We're going to do an experiment with these rawhide bottles. We're going to fill this one with water and leave it for a couple of days and see what the result is.
And you will come back and see what happens.
Okay. See how smelly it is.
No,
Thank you.
I've been streaming for 2 hours and 20
Now it's water, and now I have to just make sure my husband don't pour the water out. So
right.
Put it here.
This is
I looked at
science.
average watch time.
Medieval science.
And then my camera suddenly died. It was working absolutely fine and then just stopped, never to work again. So I lost half a day finding a new camera, which cost me almost all the money I had. Still, God laugh
This game, and then we can figure something to play together.
But there's a problem, isn't there, here? Because you are presumably interested in the ordinary lives of people in the medieval period, and why shouldn't you be? It's a fascinating topic. And there's a limit to what I can tell you in a little video like this, so you're likely to want to find out more and take advantage of all the knowledge that's stored in the world's libraries. But you can't, because there's a global pandemic on and all the libraries are shut. And besides, what with the lockdown and everything, now that you've taken up basketry, your hands are busy and you can't turn the pages. It just doesn't work. So what can you do? What you can do is take advantage of a free offer by my sponsor, Audible. You see, Audible is a massive website with a huge online library of audiobooks that you can listen to whilst you're weaving.
Brilliant. Okay, and a couple of books that caught my eye there were The Time Traveller's Guide to Medieval England by Ian Mortimer. That's one that I very much enjoyed. And he concentrates on the 14th century, which is a good century to pick, actually, because I think when most people think of the medieval period, they're actually picturing the 14th century, and it's a time of tremendous change. I mean, people think of the 20th century as a time of tremendous change, which of course it was in many ways, but not in every, like not in fashion. I mean, we're still today, aren't we? We're still wearing shirt, tie, jacket, sweaters, underpants, trousers, socks, all the usual stuff that we were wearing a century ago. But people at the end of the 14th century were wearing clothes that were completely different from the ones at the beginning of the 14th century. Yes, it was great. You got the plague as well, so it's a good century to pick. And anyway, so if you were to click on the link in the description, or if you like typing, type in audible.com/LindyBeige, or if you're one of these modern types who likes texting, you could text LindyBeige to 500 500. Then you could take advantage of the free 1-month trial that they got going, and you could download a free audiobook, which is yours to keep, by the way. You don't have to listen to it within the month either. It's yours to keep forever. And while you're there, you could take advantage of some of the Audible originals. Audible originals, they're produced by all sorts of quite starry names, but there's quite a variety. It's stuff that they have largely commissioned themselves. It includes lots of comedies and current affairs, self-help stuff. Oh, you know, all the usual stuff that you might find in the library, but because they're all shut. Another book was Chaucer's People by Liza Pickard. Again, it's everyday lives of people in medieval England. She's looking at the Canterbury Tales anew, looking at the characters in it that actually represent a fair cross-section of society at the time, and she finds quite a lot more to say about those sort of people, and so she does. So there you go. So there is a way you can find out more on this topic, thanks to my sponsor. And I reckon that if you take advantage of this offer, then in a month's time, you might be pretty proud of your basketry.
Yes, basketry. Must give it a go. This building is very narrow. This not very old-looking building has a very old back wall. Whoops, looks as though that bit of the wall fell down and got rebuilt. Some modern supports there too.
So here we have some people making shoes as part of a sort of shoemaking course here, and you've been given all the materials you need, is that right?
Exactly. All the materials, been paid for it, but yeah.
So after how long do you expect to have a pair of shoes?
Oh, well, I'm not so skilled, so yeah, a couple of more hours, I believe.
Okay, and you've already taken how long to get this far?
Oh, since half past 8. Lunch break.
This is 8 hours. Okay, yeah. And so you've got most of a shoe here.
Yeah, it's one shoe. It's done.
Right.
I need some straps to close it, but I can do that anytime. So I started on the other one.
Okay, so you've hidden the sewing by cutting a slit.
Yep.
And hoping that will...
Yeah, to prevent it from breaking as soon as you just start stepping on it.
Right, but the sole will only have to wear a little bit before it'll get to the...
Yeah, but it'll take a lot longer than if you put the seam on the outside.
Right, it'll just wear through immediately.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're sewing on the diagonal through the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And this is a shoe from what period?
11th century. No, 12th century.
12th century.
The 1100s.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have a pair of authentic scissors.
Yeah.
And you have an awl. And you're using very stout thread. Is that waxed?
Yes, it is. It's linen thread, I think. And it's waxed.
Yeah. That's stout stuff. And then, will you wear this? For instance, here we're on gravel. Will you be, having spent all this time making the shoe, will you then be very reluctant to walk around on gravel and modern roads?
I did these at home.
Right.
But I cheated and put a rubber sole on it.
Yeah. No, I sympathise. I have done the same myself.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
So maybe I will do the same to these ones, but I'm not sure yet.
It's nice to have one set of completely authentic boots.
Oh yes, it is.
The red outer sole is fixed with this seam, so you can actually remove it and have an inner sole, so you just interchange it.
Right.
when it gets worn down.
Viking period puttees. Are these hooks on the straps a reenactorism? Well, it is a simple idea and they do work, so... Viking period brooches. They're really heavy. Leather water bottles, probably waterproofed with beeswax or the like. I have one of those somewhere. This is an interesting design of grill. Lots and lots of the same type of big pin, all joined together. A hearth that is its own set of skewers. Yes, there was a lot of tat on offer. There were some new agey stalls, but refreshingly few, and there were lots of inauthentic things designed for children, but that's fine.
So this is what they're getting kids today to shoot at each other. Yeah, that couldn't possibly hurt, could it?
But there was also inauthentic tat designed for adults. Double-bitted axes, film props. Oh, that's just shocking. Things like this that work only because they use
Especially
modern
like-
fixings and materials like
Yeah, they end
elastic.
up being
There are a
friends
few
with my
stalls
dad.
selling fiberglass bows covered in cheap
when-
leather and selling them as medieval. If you enjoy shooting your bow like one of these, well then that's great. Archery is
Yeah,
fun.
that's
Just
very
please don't
questionable.
ever claim authenticity. Here are some Viking swords, but there is a lot wrong with them. Wrong blade shape, wrong proportions, wrong construction methods.
Handle much longer than a hand.
But there was plenty of good stuff too.
2 days later.
And this hole was already there
Right.
because of the damage of this one
Yes,
when I
yes.
started up.
Yes.
So there is no hole because of the water. The
No,
hole is there.
no.
It was already there when I filled it.
Mhm.
So, but it's yeah.
Okay, it is soft,
but
it
keep-
is working.
keeping the shape.
It is working as a bottle still. It's holding
Yeah.
the water.
Yeah.
And as for the smell,
I don't think it smells nothing.
there's a
Small.
bitter smell there.
Little bit. You want to try to drink it?
It was clean water when it went in, right?
Yeah.
I shall do this for
Everything-
science.
Everything for science.
Okay. Oh! Oh!
Do you want to have
yeah.
a glass of clean water now?
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Okay, I give you.
Yeah, that tastes of rawhide.
Oh!
Very definitely of rawhide. Yeah.
Well, that's why you should have wine in it.
Yes, I feel such a fool.
Yes.
Yes.
Lots of wine.
Yes, lots. Yeah, lots is my favourite.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that sort of wine. Rum. Yeah.
It's also nice.
It's better. It's stronger.
Okay.
Yes.
Every germ.
It kills everything.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. I think I. There's a massive queue here. What's this massive queue for?
Let's see, what did I say? I guess I'll just talk.
Yeah, this is Billiam. Making content about things I remember seeing growing up is like fishing for vague memories. For example, it took me weeks to figure out what the Pixter was, despite the fact that I vividly remembered what it did. I only have a passing familiarity or vague memories of many of the things I cover on this channel, but one thing I remember incredibly vividly, despite having only seen a few episodes of it as a kid, is Bobobo Bobobo.
Call me Bobobo, but it's Bobobo. Bobobo!
Shortened as Bobobo, Bobobo stars Bobobo. That's Bobobo Bobobo. 3 bow, 1 bow, 2 bow, 1 bow. Bobobo, the show, is a surrealist, absurdist comedy anime that uses the framing device of a standard shonen action show. Bobobo is the seemingly quiet, cool protagonist.
You sure helped me out, bud.
Hold on. My name is Bobobo. Please don't call me Bud. Call me Bobobo.
He has a personal vendetta against the powerful Chrome
Jesus
Dome
Christ.
Empire, a powerful organization who forces the citizens of the Margarita Kingdom to be bald. And Bobobo, he's not having it. Bobobo uses his fighting skills and his ultimate technique, the Fist of the Nose Hair, to take on the Chrome Dome Empire and restore hair to the land.
bold will hear of your insolence!
Like many other shonen anime, fighting a set of increasingly more powerful enemies is how Bobobo's story progresses. But the action-packed story is really just a framing device for short sketches, which flow from one to the next with the chaotic energy of short-form improv.
Herbs mean energy, so the longer I stay in this bowl of rice, the more powerful my Wiggin skills become! That's no fair, guy! I'm on a low-carb diet!
You combine that with a high-energy, absurdist, surrealist tone, Bobobo starts at an 11 and never lets up.
Well, since we're both stuck, at least he can't attack.
Fire attack!
The sketches themselves are often,
not always,
very funny and are inserted into the show like a shonen-themed version of Mad Libs, but more intense.
Rumble ruin attack! We're running out of time here.
It's an interesting contrast, like a well-cooked steak and Pop Rocks. So let's unpack the madness that is Bobobo Bobobo. Say what? Say what? Hey, I bet you didn't expect to see me in my shower. But today's video is sponsored by Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men, so where else should I be? Naturally. That gross and soggy and also
You wanna know
crusty
who
bar
did
of
look like
soap
he was
left
on crack?
sitting in your shower has
Fucking
got to
the
go.
one dude from
It's
Nickelodeon,
stinky.
like Drake
Nobody
and
likes
Josh.
stinky soap. Dr. Squatch isn't only not
Drake.
stinky, but it
The
replaces
skinny
the
dude.
stink with a
Remember he
lovely,
was on that.
character-defining fragrance.
He didn't
Pick
look
from a
good.
lovely
I'm just saying.
lineup of fragrances that you would love to display
Lots of
in your bio.
chorus,
What does
Kevin
deep-sea
Michael
goat milk
shit.
say about you? Well, first of all, I never knew there were deep-sea
Kinda
goats.
scary,
But maybe it also says that you love the ocean. But the real ocean is stinky. This is all the things you love about the ocean without the stink. Now, what does my personal favorite scent, the grapefruit IPA, say about me? Well, it says that I love this scent. I can't stop smelling it. I just love this flavor. I mean scent. It's so gentle and like nice on your skin. Why would you want to use mean soap? Be nice to your skin. I just rinsed and my skin is so soft and gentle right now. I don't know, but maybe you're a pine tar kind of guy, the kind of guy who goes out into the woods in the afternoon and then comes across Bigfoot himself, only to bring him home for him to tell you about his soap.
Really, it's me, Bigfoot. You stink. I'm not Dr. Squatch. I'm just a fan of the brand. Bigfoot prefers all natural ingredients. Read all the ingredients on the box itself. You'll recognize them.
By clicking the link in the description below, new customers can get 20% off of orders $20 or more by using code DSCBillion. Just click the link in the description below. Thanks to Dr. Squatch for sponsoring this video. Produced by Dragon Ball Z Studio and more importantly Zatch Bell Studio Toei Animation, Bobobo the anime aired in Japan from November 2003 to October of 2005. And an English anime dub adaptation aired on Cartoon Network from 2005 to 2007. This is the version I remember seeing and it's the version I will be discussing. The anime is based on the serialized manga written and illustrated by absurdist mangaka Yoshio
What
Sawa.
should we
Only
play?
five
I'm gonna pause that for a second. Well, I finished up my stuff on Age of Empires. That's done. I finished up my stuff on Age of Empires. So I'm trying to play good after.
So you're going to start the party. Advanced very far in 1010. You want to go ahead and please start because we're not going to be in this scenario. We didn't start a multiplayer game right off the bat. Eventually let's have an account. Get another thing. Or get rid of the on partnership. If you wanted to start it and say how you feel about it, you're pretty cool too. This sort of type of choose.
Bo, 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 bo.